Welcome to the Hawks Nest stream show. My name is Brendan Kane, and I do appreciate you tuning on in today as we cook our way through this off season. And today we're getting into some geekier territory, but this is the dreamer section of the off season a little bit, at least in today's show, regards to today's show, being that the Seattle Seahawks are still sitting on some very tasty amount of cap space. There is a term that John Schneider has liked to use, and he's liked to use it very often. He says he gets it from his predecessor out there at Green Bay, Ted Thompson, who used to say he wants to keep his powder dry. And I think especially from the Green Bay's Packers situation versus ours, when he was first telling him to him, that's even a team that's more constricted and restricted in their salary cap, how much money that they can spend. They're not a necessarily super cash-rich organization, at least not necessarily to the degree of what we are here in Seattle and how much money we can go out there and spend. So keeping this powder dry and keeping it, what it essentially means is that you want to be in a position so that if there is a market opportunity that presents itself, you can jump on it with 2 feet and you don't find yourself saying, man, that's just the kind of player we want to add to our team here, but we just don't have the cap space. We've used it all up. We've shot our wad, so to speak. And this is a place where I think John has recognized, especially when we go back through recent history here and just looking kind of last 7, 8 years or so, where you've seen him really, really lean on this now, I think, more than ever. And what I mean by that is that it used to be that you would build your team up in the offseason most of the time, right? You're going to go free agency, you're going to do your in-house signings, you're going to get to the draft. And then once you got after the draft, you're pretty much in that no man's land as far as there not being a lot of availability to upgrade your team. So, and historically, you would, as a team, not really have any real cap space or try to make sure you have cap space for that time of year because players just wouldn't come available. But what we've seen now more and more with these contract negotiations, with the weird hold-in rules with some players where they're not holding out, they're kind of holding in, that it's allowed for a lot more movement from these players just prior to the start of the season, anywhere from the beginning of training camp right up to the end of training camp. And what happens with that then from a John Schneider perspective, I think if you were to ask him, is that you're able to then go out there and grab a player that you're not having to necessarily pay max prices for or max draft capital for to pull that really talented player back in. Now, this hasn't always exactly worked as far as the value structure of that goes, because when we do look at the trades that this team has made here over the past few years, with Sheldon Richardson back in 2017 kind of starting off this trend for John Schneider. Then you have 2019, a Jadeveon Clowney third-round trade. These are all trades that are made, by the way, in training camp, kind of at the beginning of that training camp or at the end of that training camp period, so to speak there. Jamal Adams with the 2 1s that you had for him as well. And then last year, these are more of kind of some smaller little deals, but it just shows again from last year that John was still willing to be active last year in that training camp period and not just simply say, we're riding with what we've got. We're going to just roll here. So Travis Gibson, you gave up a 6th-round pick to go out and grab him. You gave Connor Williams a good contract there, a 1-year deal, but I think it was like 5.75 or something like that is what you signed him for. Had a couple of other deals with a Darrell Taylor that you moved out, Michael Jackson that you moved out. So it can kind of go the other way too, where you're able to get some draft capital back for guys that you might be otherwise looking to maybe release around the end of training camp. But he's been showing a willingness to be more active than ever. And I think that John also tends to believe that this is a little bit of a symptom of the new age and new style of training players, because you used to want to have these players in-house 24/7 so you could get through all the OTAs and have them with the coaching staff and ready to go. Allergies pop up right when I go live. I hate my nose. So we see that this is something that he's leaned into in recent years. I think the training aspect and the fact that you can bring guys in and now there's not that loss of off-season program like you used to have where you had to get them through all of the parts of your program to learn it, to make sure you're getting the most out of them. You make these trades, I think, because you realize in the off-season you're having as less time with these players as ever. So there's less of that to be lost if you get these guys at sort of the 25th hour in the roster building process, being that at the end of training camp, essentially. And that's where I think John's leaned into this a little bit. And why I think that this is really very important for specifically this year is right now your Seattle Seahawks are sitting on as much cap space at this time of the year as any time that I can remember in any given history. You know, you feels like most of the time when you're about at this spot, you're sitting with maybe 12, 13, 14 million dollars or so. Right now, the Hawks are sitting at $32 million, approximately speaking. And then they also have about another $8.5 million with the Noah Fan contract that could be further money that they do free up in addition to that. So they've got a lot more space than they normally would have to be able to go out and make even maybe that more of a major, move at that point, if that's possible. We'll see if they're going to make, potentially that big home run kind of swing, but they could do so if they wanted to. Now, you can obviously too use some of the cap space for contract extensions or roll the money over next year if you want to roll that route. But if there's that market opportunity, this is the key, a guy that becomes available, but people maybe didn't think would be available. The Steelers are looking at their situation here coming into training camp, and they say, well, man, we're not getting Aaron Rodgers in here. And boy, we just don't think that a Rudolph is necessarily going to go out there this year and give us something as far as, really making us feel like we're going to be able to go and get a championship with Mason Rudolph at the helm. And not a lot of other quarterback options available to us now. So maybe we just kind of start to look for this one to be a little bit towards the future on that one. I'm just saying this is a perspective where these situations are fluid and stuff can kind of come out to where you think this guy's embedded and locked in with this organization, and then just something comes around to the other side of it that just sort of frees him up unexpectedly, as did kind of happen in the Sheldon Richardson case, or the Jadeveon Clowney case, or of course the Jamal Adams case. That's how all three of those kind of played out, where it wasn't that you thought in May you were going to have an opportunity to get those guys. It's just that it suddenly came out to be, and John was in a position to go out there and strike. Something that's interesting when you do look at John and kind of studying a little bit of what he's gone for, the way he's operated here from a methodology standpoint and how you're looking here on into the future, is that when you go back to 2021, you can see on the far right-hand side of this that the Seahawks had $14 million of dead money. They were 27th in the NFL in dead money in 2021. So very little amount of dead money. What money you were spending was out there on the field. You were getting performance for what you're paying in general terms. Things started to kind of shift, though, right about the time of the Russell Wilson trade, where now you're getting up into $57 million of dead money. That's money no longer on the books that you're essentially still paying off to prior contracts. And you can see here Russell's $26 million made a big chunk, huge chunk of that. You had Bobby Wagner in there, Dwayne Brown at $3.5 million, Sidney Jones at $3 million, Quandre Diggs at $2.5 million. So quite a bit of money there that was put over to dead money in the way that this was set up. And this kind of continued as a little bit of a trend. 2023, you're not as high, but you're still at $24 million of dead money. So you came back down just a little bit at that point. Then back into 2024, we're back up to $58 million, which if you notice now is 14th in the NFL. So this is where we can see that John's also operating within what is kind of the given trend in the NFL that we're seeing right now, where you would think with $58 million, that would put you up near the top. I mean, not 2 years ago at $57 million, you were fifth, right, in total dead money in the sport. But now we see 2 years later that right up around about the same amount, $1 million more, and you're middle of the road, meaning that more NFL teams now are eating into this dead money situation. More teams are wrapping their arms around dead money and not looking at it as this bridge that they just can't cross, that this is just something that's a representation of bad business operation. I think this speaks to how cash rich these organizations are, that they're willing to eat the dead money in this way and not kind of bat an eye at it. So this has kind of continued into 2025 for your Hawks as well, as right now you are second in the NFL with $67 million of dead money. Only sitting behind the San Francisco 49ers is the most dead money in the NFL. This is really largely, though, driven by the DK Metcalf and the Geno Smith and Draymond Jones and Tyler Lockett contracts. I mean, these are the four that are really kind of snookering you on that. And I think with two of them, Geno, DK wanted out of town, so this wasn't as much of you not planning correctly or whatnot. They wanted to get out, and you got some trade returns back for them. So I don't know if it's pure dead bad money where you're getting actually you got some draft capital back. You got something on the other side of it, even though you are kind of paying that money, where a lot of times dead money, you're just blowing out the dead money with a guy like Draymond Jones, where you're eating the $14 million because the guy's just not a particularly good player for the price you're paying for them. So there is a little bit of maybe a silver lining to this amount of dead money. The other part of this is because you have smartly spent your cash overall, and you've done a good job of not really extending yourself out from a future contract situation. you still do get to sit on that then $32 million of cap space. You still get to operate with a little bit of chunk there to be able to, move and swerve a little bit, even though you're eating this kind of dead money, which is another place I would say is a little different than prior recent years, where when I look at some of the recent years and we have the dead money, the Russell Wilson dead money year last year, where you really feel like you're up against the ceiling of the cap and there's really no move to make. John's got to create a lot of base to bonus situations on the team with players in order to just create the space in order to go do just normal business operations, go add a Connor Williams or go make a trade. So I would say that, springtime in Southern Cal. Wouldn't think this would be a problem with allergies, but holy Lord. So I would think we're going to be able to make a move here, do something. I think John is kind of side-eyeing a little bit here into training camp, somebody coming up that he can go out there and jump upon. He's mentioned and intimated a little bit this is going to probably be a bit of the process coming down the line. When you look at right now what we have free agent-wise, it's pretty lean. So if we're looking at a Connor Williams kind of situation and replicating that, here are some of the free agents that you have available on the open market right now. These are sort of the prime guys that are sort of sitting out there. So Aaron Rodgers, Keenan Allen, Von Miller, Amari Cooper, and none of those are really going to interest Seattle. There's no reason to bring any of those guys on, I wouldn't think. Brandon Scherf has been a left guard in the sport for a long time. A little bit of diminished play, 33 years old, but you don't have to trade for him. You could insert him as possibly a day one kind of left guard starter, and maybe he can give you a Lake and Tomlinson-like level of performance there at left guard if you bring him out there. But he has a body. He's a guy that's certain in what he's bringing and knows what he's bringing. That is a guy that could become a target for them. Certainly is not going to be making anywhere close to what he made prior. I don't even think you're going to give $6.6 million. He's probably a 1 year, $4 million kind of guy if you brought him in. I don't think they're going to look at edge rushers here. So no Matt Judon. I don't think Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith. I don't think any of those guys are really in play. Maybe Jadeveon Clowney because of his familiarity with Mike Macdonald in this defense and being a really good fit to this defense. But even if you brought in an edge at this point, you're going to have to probably make a supplemental move with one of the other 4 edges on your roster so you don't have too much of a log jam at the position. Stephon Gilmore is a guy that could be interesting. Man, he's getting old, but he's been a very good player. It's not going to cost a lot on a 1-year deal. They have looked at Shaq Griffin and bringing him back as well, though we don't have anything as really firm that they sound like they're really in on that. It just kind of seems like they're kind of kicking the tires there. Rasul Douglas, cornerback last year for Buffalo, a guy that does have familiarity with Mike Macdonald's defense and played well within Mike Macdonald's defense a couple of years ago. He could be another guy that becomes available or is available. I know the team's looking at him as well. But all of these, as you can see, are kind of minor end sort of deals when it's all said and done on these ones. And there's really not a guy. Will Hernandez is more of a right guard coming off a torn ACL. There's just not really any guys that when I look at this right here that stand out to me that would make sense for this being where they're going to spend their money. Come on, Cat. Woo! You're wild with it today, huh? So I would look more on this one being to 2026 guys. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at these guys here in 2026 that are due to be free agents because these are the guys where John might be more locking into trying to pull over a little bit, where you're on a team with the player and you don't intend to sign him in the future, get some draft capital returns back for him right now. And Seattle can add themselves a nice little piece, a nice part that's just not a free agent that nobody wanted to sign, but actually a guy that can bring some quality to it. So a guy that I've thought a little bit about, maybe a potential guy that gets on the market if they can't get to a contract extension here, especially if Steelers look at this upcoming season and they have less of a firmness in their belief that they're going to be ready to contend this year, especially if they can't get the quarterback in, which is kind of looking like it might be the problem here. We'll see. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been thrown with DK, so maybe it's just inevitable that he's going to be there when it's all said and done. But he does want to get that extension done, I know, with the Steelers in addition, and that can be a big push to getting that kind of thing done. We know as well, Trey Hendrickson is quasi on the open market. A little bit of an older guy too, like Watt. I don't think he's quite the complete player that Watt is. He's going to cost about the same that Watt would cost. You're going to have to probably give up a minimum of a 2nd and 4th round pick. That's probably the bare minimum that you're going to have to give up for him. I'm not as big on this kind of move as I would be with a Watt, but it's a possibility. The guy is on the open market, and Bengals are probably going to move him. I don't see them signing him, and he's going to probably hold in if they don't. So it seems like he's going to force their hand, even though the Bengals are very hesitant to make those kind of trades in recent given history. Mike Evans isn't going anywhere from Tampa Bay, I wouldn't say, on that side of it. Colton Miller is probably likely to remain with the Vegas Raiders as they'll have the money to spend him. The Khalil Mack, we'll see. I don't think that's really much of a guy that they would look at there. Zach Allen with the Denver Broncos. Broncos are going to have a lesser year this year. Maybe that's a guy that you look to add to the trade deadline. The team was very interested in him a couple of years ago when they brought in Draymond Jones and then just missed out to him going to Denver there. It's been a good player for them. We'll see what Denver chooses to do on that situation, but could be a guy that they try to come back around and target again. Wyatt Teller is a guy a lot of people connected to the Seahawks once the Browns brought in the Chicago kid, Tevin Jenkins, that they brought in over there, and they're thinking that maybe now that'll mean that Wyatt Teller could be on the move as he's going in the last year of his deal. Could be Joel Bitonio too. Bitonio almost 35 years old, so a lot older of a player there with the Browns, but they do have a little bit of a 3 men for only 2 positions situation going out there at Cleveland. So maybe a way for Seattle to come in and add on to the stock a little bit with one of those 2 guys. They definitely could be 2 possible targets there that the Seahawks narrow in on with that. Not sure that there's a lot of other guys coming up onto the contract side of it here that stand out to me that they could move for. There's, some slightly lesser kind of players down the line of the season that definitely could maybe pop up in that way. But I think overall, those would be the main guys that they would be kind of looking in to sort of target into kind of next year's situation of things. Obviously, if we have an injury or something go on like that, that might open more of the door here. But there's not a lot that jumps out to me on some of the lower edge guys here that are, due to be free agents. But it doesn't just have to be just this list of guys as potential targets too. These are just the ones that stand out to you having the one last year on their deal, and that these, and given history in years past, tend to be the guys that then will be more open to being moved once we get maybe potentially training camp / kind of close to the trade deadline. So some interesting names there. And again, you do have a lot of cap space to be able to work with to potentially make this go. If I can get my thing here. Sorry, one second here. Make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Maybe. So you can actually see. So we've got our Seattle Seahawks right here at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about the 9th most amount of cap space with $31 million. We've got the Niners are technically actually they're the 8th because this Niners situation, I don't think they have the updated deals for their middle linebacker, Fred Warner, or I don't think they have Brock Purdy in there. So the Niners will be below us once those new contracts are in place. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you got the 8th most amount of cap space from Seahawks perspective of things. But like I said, a little bit on the other side of this too, you also then have the Noah Fant deal at about $8.5 million that you can save on that deal. And so you could potentially bump this up into another 30, you could be up to $39 million. What does $39 million put you? I mean, that essentially puts you at about the 2nd most amount of cap space just behind the Patriots at that point. And I think that of the teams where you're sitting around, you really only have kind of the Lions, Steelers, and maybe the Cardinals as sort of those teams in that place with that much space that are also kind of contenders or quasi-contenders or in the mix for being playoff contenders. Let's call it that. So a little bit of a unique situation you would find yourself from a Seahawks perspective here in that they've just got a lot of flexibility to make some moves here. Some of this may be back to, you want to extend some guys in-house. Does a Charles Cross get an extension? Do they look at Abraham Lucas? Do they look at Aboye Mafe? Some of these other guys, do they want to just keep the powder dry for the in-house guys? It's very possible. This young talent's coming into bloom, and if a couple of these guys really light it up this year, if Mafe goes out there and gives you a 14, 15 sack type of season, if Walker goes out there and gives you a 13, 1,400 yard kind of season in this offense, and we come to find he's just a purified fit for what Kubiak wants to do, really good chance then that maybe you possibly want to come back around and then give that guy a contract extension this season, save some of the money in that way for that rather than going out there and being active on the open market. But I do like the position the Seahawks find themselves in. And really, as much as anything, it's the flexibility of their movement here. They're not locked into having to go for hell, go for broke, and that they have to spend this money. If nothing presents itself, they can stand pat, roll this money over into next year and have a ton of space to work with on in the future. Because though they are sitting pretty well right now, anywhere between that sort of 8th to second most amount of cap space in the NFL, depending on what they do with Noah Fant. They're also sitting really great on into the future, which is, of course, a big harbinger of all this stuff because teams want to now more than ever bury money into the future years in order to be able to maximize out their cap for today. So this 2026 season, next year, you got the Hawks at 1, 2, they're 8th in cap space again there with $58.578 million in 2026. On top of that, as I always say, it's not just the cap space, it's also the flexibility you have within the cap space you have. Can you make other moves? Can you do other things? Are you just, kind of locked in at that point where that's the only money that you have to spend? And quite opposite, no, that's not the case. You're going to have some places where you can move some money around into 2026 if you need to on certain contracts to free even more money up if that's really what you want to do. But you're sitting with a ton of cap space. You're going to put a couple of contract extensions on the book, so some of that money is going to be eaten up by those contracts. Some of these others you might be pulling off of by that point. I think Jason Myers, for instance, what happens with him is making pretty substantial money from the kicker position. Do you start to move there? DeMarcus Lawrence, is this just a one-year contract with that one, or do you hold him on for another year beyond that point? So here's 2026 on that, by the way. I was showing 2025 there, but this is 2026 here with some of the contracts you see. And as you can see on the right side of this, I want you to notice on the right far column here into 2026, how much you have there in the black, meaning how many deals that if you wanted to move off those deals, you could save that money. You're not sitting where you don't want to be sitting is the red. You don't want to be sitting down in these spots right here that we've got with the 51.57 million there and the 10 million right there. These are okay deals, of course, because these are our rookies. That's Byron Murphy, that's Abel. Those are our two recent first round picks. So in 2026 there, your books are looking really good. To give you a comparison on this, let's take a look at the Niners. So what you notice here with the Niners on the other side of it, look at that right-hand column that I just talked about a second ago. Look at all the red. Red, 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 red. Remember, I showed you only 2 reds with us, which was just our 2 first round picks. With them, there's a lot of red. And then when you do even look at black on the other side of it, take a look at this. You've got black 0. There's no money saved when you see the 0. 0, no money saved. 0 down below here. So 0 here, no money saved. 0 on this deal, no money saved. 0 on this deal, no money saved. Now, what are those deals? Those are voided year deals. Those are players that are on the roster that are not on the roster. They're just counted as a void year contract right now. So Yetur Gross-Matos, $1.6 million, not a lot of money, but he's not even on the roster anymore at that point. Colton McKivitz, $828,000. We can go through a Jordan Elliott, a couple of these other guys. They're all not big deals, but it adds up over time when you put this many deals on your books that are this way. So you're sitting in a lot better of a position than a Niner team moving into the future on this one as far as how you can move this money. As the Niners, when I say that they're really in a tough situation moving in the future, they've pushed themselves up against the cap to a relative degree. They got a little bit of cap space, but they don't have any flexibility. They're very stuck in what they can do now moving into the future, especially if they're going to sustain a couple of injuries to some major players. And keep in mind that this 2026 season that you see for a Niner team, and comparatively speaking, is also a team that is very likely going to be having Trent Williams' dead money on the books. So Javon Hargrave already your $16 million of dead money, and Malik Collins with $4 million of dead money, and then you're going to probably add another $25 million of Trent Williams' dead money on top of the books next year when he retires for a player not on your roster. And that's, of course, already with these other guys on the roster that have got the voided contracts. Niners are in the worst position in the division by far in this respect. The Cardinals and the Rams are sitting a lot better. Cardinals 2026 cap space is only at $18 million versus the Seahawks at $58 million, but that's where they've got that flexibility to move a lot of things around as well. Because as you can see here, going over to the side, they're all in the red here in 2025, and then you go 2026, and everything looks pretty, or they're in the black in 2026. So 2025 red, now they're in the black 2026. They got a couple of deals here, but overall they've got the flexibility to kind of move around if they want, including the Kyler Murray deal at that point, where I think it starts to become a place where they can kind of start to think about if they want to move off of Map this year, where he's deep enough into that contract to make that go. And then the Rams as well are in okay shape from their standing, especially with what might go on with the Stafford deal. They got $75 million in cap space in 2026, But they could be having to replace Stafford. They could be having to replace Devontae Adams. They've got to pay Puka Nacua and a couple of the other young guys coming up there. So they've got some of that earmarked. 2027, Seahawks are sitting on $139 million of cap space, which puts them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So they're the 12th most amount of cap space in 2027. They do have, of course, the Sam Darnold contract still on the books at that point, and that's where you can save a lot of money. As you can see there, you could definitely move by this point into 2027 off his books. And you can see here with us, everything's at 2027 now, all in the black on that right side, including that $25.7 million you'd save on Sam Darnold there into year essentially 3 of that deal. So though you're only having 11th amount most of cap space as it stands on that, there's a lot of these contracts that are not going to be on the books when we get to 2027. I would be surprised if DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp are still on the roster at that point. I'd be surprised if Jaron Reed is still on the roster at that point. I think you're going to have a lot more space even in addition to this. So the bottom line brass tacks on this is that you've got a lot of cap space right now. You have a lot of cap space for next year. You have a lot of cap space for the year after. You've got a lot of cap flexibility for this year, next year, and the year after in addition to that. So there's a lot of different potential moves John could make. There's a lot of different ways to kind of bury this money down the line. And it's a great position to be for a team that's right on the precipice of cracking through, where you really feel like you're just right on the edge of maybe now getting into that place of being not only a playoff contender, but maybe a true blue contender. And you want to be in that place, like John says, to have your powder dry. So you have this team really rising up, the young talents really popping and locking. And then you're able then to add those couple of extra just over-the-top supplemental pieces that just take you to that next level. I mean, that's, I think, the ideal from a general manager standpoint. It's easier said than done. It's a timing situation where you got to strike just right, and the alignment of the sun goes with the moon and everything, and you got to know and have the just perfect read to register on it. But if you can sit in that place to be able to jump in that wave for the right deal, I think back to the Rams and the midseason deal that they made for Von Miller, where they gave up a second and a third round pick, very aggressive deal to go get Von Miller in order to bring him in as that pass rusher down the stretch. And he added to them such a great component to that defense, and they got something out of it for that second and third round pick. It was kind of draft picks well spent from their perspective, but they were able to do it because their powder was dry and because they were able to assess where their team was at appropriately, that this is the time to strike in this way. And I think John has set the stage for that now, and that though you are sitting on the second most amount of dead cap space right now, you, over the last couple of years and eating all of this dead money and eating the Russell dead money and eating this dead money this year, you've kind of, the Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams deals, you've really moved the bad money off the books. And when you look at the money on the books right now, when you look at the players that are on the books right now, you're kind of feeling like you're getting the bang for the buck all the way down for what you're paying. Yeah, you're paying Leonard Williams a tremendous amount of money. He gave you almost a defensive player of the year kind of season last year. Maybe a guy like Noah Fant could be the one guy that you're going, I don't know if I'm great with how much we're paying him for what we're getting from him, but a guy that you might still be moving prior to the time you get to the season. Uchenna Nwosu, when he's been healthy, has been fine. It's a matter of just kind of health with him. And we go down through the rest of the guys, but I think most of them you're getting, at least relative to the bang for the buck and what you're paying for them. So you don't have as much of those kind of albatross contracts that are sitting on the books like you have had in years prior. And I think that could make a bit of a difference on this as well. But all in all, bottom line, brass tacks, is that your Seattle Seahawks are in a position to strike when we get into training camp. And I would expect John Schneider to strike somewhere. I'm not going to say it's going to be a Jamal Adams 2 first-round picks and a third type thing, but would he be willing to give up semi-substantial draft capital potentially here with where they're standing on this if he sees that player that suddenly becomes available that he just can't believe is available for the price they're at? Yeah, I absolutely could see him doing that. I think he sees this as a true market opportunity where if I go and get this player in March, I'm giving up so much more in capital. I'm spending so much more in money. I'm putting so much more future commitment to that player at that time of the year versus when I can be in training camp or when I can do it at the trade deadline. And coming back to that training aspect of it too, and that prior, you used to have these guys in the building 24/7. Prior, you used to have your hands all over them and you could mold them in the exact ways you want to. Now these guys are out on their own all the time. Now they're training on their own. Now they're not in the building as much. So is there as much implicit need then to have them in under your umbrella for the whole off season? No, there's not. You can bring them in and hit the ground running. Sheldon Richardson came in here, hit the ground running. Jadeveon Clowney came in here and was by far your best pass rusher the year that he came in here. Was impactful in the run, impactful against the pass. In addition to that, Jamal Adams had his most effective season as a Seattle Seahawk in his first year. Were injuries a problem after that? Yeah, you better believe they were. But that was where he set the defensive back sack record. So you can get a really great, effective year from that player first year, even getting him late into the process of training camp, because this is just the new NFL world that we live in. Just the new standard operating business procedure, so to speak, on that. You guys let me know, though. Is there a guy that you guys have that you're looking at? Is there a Trey Hendrickson? Are you hoping maybe a Watt becomes available and you can find a creative trade there with Pittsburgh to make it worth their while? Or would you just like to see the Seattle Seahawks stand pat? Go through the season, get into training camp, go into a couple games into the season, get yourself just prior to the trade deadline, make the assessment at that time. Don't do it at training camp, but say, look, we got Sam Darnold, we've got to kind of rebuild offensive line, we got a new offensive coordinator. It may not hit this year, so maybe it's in our best interest on that because of that to just let this year kind of play out a bit, see where things are at training camp, and then maybe strike at that time, or just sit back the whole way and just let it play out slow and fluidly. Because if you don't spend this money, if you're able to roll some of this cash on over into 2026, understanding you're already sitting really pretty into 2026, now you're able to hit both rocket boosters at the same time into 2026 with that extra cash that you've put on top. And now you're a little more able to heartily go for it at that point, rather than kind of quasi go for it this year and quasi go for it next year, just sort of push all of your chips a little bit then into 2026. I don't know if I see John doing that necessarily, but I think that there's a lot of different options on the table at this point for John, and I think he's considering all of them as a real true possibility in the direction he'll go. I know I would be. You guys let me know. Allergies are knocking your boy down the last couple of weeks here. I don't know what's going on. Freaking every day's an allergy attack right when I go live for some reason. Me in the house. What's up, me? Oh, man, coming in so kind as you have so very often through this offseason, dropping a $50 donation to the channel, and I really thank you for that, me. You've been awesome, man, awesome, and just helping us, as I said, keep the lights on out here at the Hawks Nest, me. You are for sure. Okay, you're paying that, getting that electric bill paid out here. Me with a $50 donation. Thank you so much, man. Give a little applause for that one. Give a little applause, huh? Me says, I made a little dono at the casino last night. Thought I'd keep with the trend and show a little love. Hope you and all the 12s are doing mighty fine on this Wednesday. As always, go Hawks, go 12s. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate you.
It's hot and sweaty and stanky.
And you are awesome, me. Everything you've done for this channel here throughout this offseason, just dropping so many donos onto my side and doing great, man. I think the 12s are feeling good about this upcoming season. We're liking how the schedule release looked. You always worry a little bit about that landmine exploding underneath your feet and being dumped with like 4 games in 17 nights, or having a gauntlet of a schedule you have to go through, or an early season bye, or 15 10 a.m. games that you have to play through the season. But we didn't get that. Instead, we ended up on the other side of it with a pretty good schedule. We're sitting on good cap space. We have a very fine, talented young team that's slowly taking their steps forward and coming together. There's a lot to feel optimistic about here right now with this team and where they're going, man. But thank you, man. Congrats on the casino hit last night. Hopefully it was a tasty hit at that. And very, very kind of you, brother. Very, very kind of you. I really appreciate you for that. Catalyst says, I'm glad John doesn't do void years much. He tends to avoid it. That's for sure, Catalyst. It'll be interesting to see as we've watched his trend in recent years and willingness to go with the league trends of eating that dead money and being willing to eat that dead money, that this was sort of a new normal operating business. It'll be interesting to see if he does then, once the team becomes contenders, Catalyst, then continue that trend as to when you look through the contenders of other teams out there, that they are embracing this void year concept. I mean, look no further than, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles as the team that's kind of driving this as much as anybody. It just half the contracts on their books appear to be void years. And I mean, they're really the damning the torpedoes for future years in this respect, because I can go to 2029. This is 2029 I'm showing you. Look at all of the void year contracts on the books for the Eagles here. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of void-year contracts. And some of these are just smaller deals, but this is 2029 I'm showing you. Not 26, not 27, not 28, 2029. So it will be catalyst, I think, interesting to see if it's going to be that John, once you become a contender, might say, look, when we're not a contender, I'm not going to do it. But once we become a contender, this is now the new norm, like eating a lot of substantial dead money. This is what you have to do now if you want to go and become that contending team. I don't know that that's the case. I'm just wondering if that's going to be the way that rolls, Catalyst is Kazir White for linebacker depth. It's a possibility. I think Kazir wants to go probably find a starting opportunity somewhere. And there might be a team that, when we get down to training camp, gives him more of a better option to get there. But if you could bring him in, that'd be great. That would be a great depth piece. He's played very well for the Cardinals in recent years. Jack Dong, where's Pumpkin? We got her up here on my right shoulder here. The cats are starting to kind of line in on their spots. They're starting to figure out when we go live where they need to be at on this one. So they're kind enough today where they're chilling out on that side, which is cool. Thank you, me. You're the man. I appreciate you for that. Really do, brother. Zach, I just hope we are over big dead money hits after this season for a while. Yeah, I think that you're in a good position for this to not have to be a bridge you have to cross. And it's been kind of just bad timing with Jamal Adams to Quandre Diggs. It's like Russell Wilson to Jamal Adams to Quandre Diggs to the past season with DK and Geno. And when you do look right now into the future here, you aren't seeing as much, especially go to 2026, of guys that outside of Sam Darnold completely falling on his face, or Cooper Kupp just being a complete shell of himself. And even if Kupp was not anywhere close to Triple Crown Cooper Kupp, we can see on this that you could still get out from under the deal. You still save $9.5 million if you had to do that with him, where there's going to be, okay, what's our dead money potential hits next year? You're not doing Leonard Williams. You're probably not doing Sam Darnold. So you're really looking more down into now. Cooper Kupp, you're not doing it with Witherspoon. Lawrence, maybe he's a $4 million. So you got like $12 million between Cooper Kupp and Lawrence in dead money if you let them go. Myers maybe at $2 million. So when we're talking about, to your question on this and point on that, you're talking about recent years being up at $58 million of dead money. And next year, if they're going to go down the dead money route, that's not to say they will, but if they had to with a couple of players that there's a decision to be made upon them, then you're going to be more in the 16, 17, $18 million of dead money range in general terms, which is much more, you can swallow that. That's not the ouch as much as it is when you're at $58 million, or like the Niners are at $75 million right now. I'm not a fan of void years either, Zach. I do like it when you have a team like the Eagles that are just heartily, your team's ready, they're there, you don't have to do an extra lot. You're going to have a run for a couple of years with the team as it's constructed the way they're constructed. There's going to be a price to pay on the other side of it from the Eagles' perspective, but I like them going that aggressively with it like they have. I kind of do. I think it's not every team should do it. I don't think that you should trick yourself into thinking you're better than you are and start doing it. But if you're in the place where they're at, when you have so much solidity across the board, why not? Why not at that point? Me, roulette, simple enough for my little brain. Oh my goodness, roulette, huh? I don't know if I could ever play roulette. I'd be like, there's no way I got a chance at this thing. There's just no way. Brian Myers says Clowney. I want to bring back Clowney, Brian. I want to do it. MJ Seahawk, I like the youth movement. Let's see if undrafted free agents work out. Wait on a vet until training camp is almost done. 1-year deal to fill a need is fine. Yeah, I'm good with it too, man. If they want to just be patient on this and not have to feel like they've got to be pressed to do a lot of stuff here at this point and just even want to roll the money over, I'm okay with it. I'm completely fine with it if they want to go there. I'm glad they're not changing the playoff format, says Femi. Yeah, I'm okay with it too. I like that there's still something for winning the division, and I not everything has to be 100% complete fair in the whole, playoff structure and all of that thing. Sometimes that's football. Sometimes things are not always 100% completely fair, especially when it comes to referees. But Tush Push also didn't get voted down, so that's going to continue to as well. Maybe helpful for us because maybe we're going to have another Tush Push master in Jalen Milrow. Maybe that we can just bring him out for the Tushes. It's all for the Tushes, right, Jalen? It's all for the Tushes. Zach says, this is the final straw for the Niners. Unless they start hitting 75% of their draft picks, they are in trouble. Zach brings up a great point, and you can see it in what I just showed you guys there with the bad money on the books for them and where they're standing and how it is. And that is that, freaking stop. Let me move what I want to move. Okay. So you got them here, 2026. Can't do much of anything this upcoming year. I mean, if they want to restructure a contract to create space right now, they can't do it. They're going to have some cap space left after the Brock Purdy deal. But, man, you go back into that 26, 27 range of things, you pop on over into there. And here's 26. Red. Only save $8 million. Only save $4 million. Zero. Only save $4 million. Only save $2 million. Only save 1.6. There's no flexibility in these deals to do much outside of trying to move base to bonus. So Bosa, you want to convert the 22.68 when he's already sitting on a $42 million cap hit, and push that into future years. You can see with the Kittle, you've got the Kittle deal at a base 1.5, the Brand Ayuk deal at a 1.2. There's no base to bonus to convert there. You are stuck. Christian McCaffrey, 1.3 base. Lenore, 1.2 base. That's where you're going to create that space is base to bonus, where you hope it'll sit like a guy like Bosa there, where you've got the $23 million, you base to bonus it, and now they got that splits up through the rest of the contract, that bonus money, and now you can actually create some space in the interim. But they're going to be stuck, and this is still with them eating $75 million this year in dead money. So yeah, the Niners, this is kind of a bit of a last gasp for them this year. And I think that they're still going to be potentially a team this year that can make some noise. And I don't want to undersell them this year like they're done and spend. With that easy schedule and bringing back the roster like they are, they certainly have a lot of potential to still go out there and be a Super Bowl contender this year. But in the future years, with the Brock Purdy contract clicking really into play by year 2, I think that they're going to struggle to be able to round out that roster. And like you said, they're going to have to hit all of their draft picks, basically. Or a good portion of their draft picks are going to have to hit. We got a donation here from Jordan. Oh, sorry, let me make sure I'm not behind here. Oh, okay. I got Jeff Ed Ridgeway. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, Ed. I really appreciate you jumping aboard the Hawks Nest. Folks, do please hit that like button, maybe sub up like Ed has down there, and would really appreciate it. But thank you, Ed. Welcome aboard, man. And thank you for that. Jordan, thank you for the $5 donation. Do contract extensions remove void years? If not, the Warner extension seems like the Niners are okay with just an average team after a couple of years. No, contract extensions do not remove void years. The void years, once they are on the books, they are on the books. Whatever you're adding as far as a contract extension adds on top of what void years exists on that. And yes, they're in the position here. This is 2026. I don't even know if this is quite the new. Hold on. Okay. So this is still, this Fred Warner deal you're looking at right here too, by the way, for 2026 is still not with the updated numbers on the books. Let's see if they've got this one done. Yeah. So they got the Kittle one done. Kittle one is accurate. What you're seeing here is accurate monetarily wise, but the Fred Warner one, which is where this is at right here. And you can see had only 311,000 if they'd tried to do something different with him, but they're putting him on an extension here for 2025. So already with Warner, you had, to your point on this, the $5.92 million in signing bonus, voided years. That's not him on the books at that point. This is like the Trent Williams voided year in 27 that you see at 12.3. And that is, and this is keeping in mind, Trent retires in 2026. You have the dead money that you have to sustain for him in 2026 on the bonus money now that all kind of comes due and all at once. But then there's going to be the void years on top of this into future years for Trent Williams beyond that. So now this is the void years you're already on the books for 5.92 with Fred Warner not under contract essentially in 2027. Now you put that contract on top of this void year money. And that's where they're going to get really tight here. Really tight, Jordan. And I have a hard time like you do seeing him as being anything but an average team. McCaffrey gone, Trent Williams gone. Where's that offensive line at? Defensively speaking, they've been kind of slowly bleeding defensive talent in recent years. Are they able to reinforce that with the draft? I feels like the draft's going to be a little bit too much to ask for it all to come from there. And they just haven't really had as much luck in their free agent signings. Yetur Gross-Mastos, all these void years they're giving to that guy. I mean, does he give them much on the football field? Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave. They've tried to bring in a couple of defenders in recent years to hope to reinforce some ranks, and they're kind of paying the price for missing on those guys. There's good money of dead money on the books now because you missed on those guys. Look no further than just 2025 here, where when we go down the bottom of this list here, you can see, look at all this dead money. But at the top of that's going to be a bit of the Hargrave contract and Malik Collins. And of course, this perpetuates even into 2026, where even this is 2026, you're still accounting for Hargrave and Collins on your roster to the tune of $20 million. I was showing you next year with the Hawks alone, if you got to move off a Cup, you got to move off of DeMarcus Lawrence, got to move off of Jason Myers, you're still below the $20 million mark. And there'll be more names the Niners add on to Hargrave and Collins into next year. So it's not just that's all the dead money they're going to have. It's going to be more and more and more for them beyond this season. And the Niners are in that pickle, but they've done a little bit like what the Eagles have done, just not to this great extreme degree with the void year stuff. But they've definitely stretched themselves out to say, look, we want more for today, less for tomorrow, to make sure more for today can maybe give us a better chance of capturing the championship success. Haven't been able to do it, but now you got to pay the price to the other side of that, Jordan. Now the bill becomes due to the other side. You don't get to wave it away. You don't get to ask them to comp it on the house. Now you got to pay for those void years that you've buried. And the Niners are going to have to do some tap dancing, which is especially probably going to get hard, Jordan, because ownership has seemingly indicated to them this offseason, and part of the reason they're eating $75 million of dead money is because ownership is saying, you're spending all of this money, you're robbing all of this for tomorrow, and you're not even getting us championships. We were a last place team last year, and you're robbing all of this stuff for tomorrow. Enough of this, no more of this. So it gets even harder for the Niners. They're even more restricted, are the Niners, beyond what the parameters show, the fundamentals of their books, by kind of the mandate of the owner also coming in on this, is going to make it tougher for them. There's no two ways about that, Jordan. Yeah, I see it the same way, man. And thank you for the donation. I appreciate you for that. Very much so. Earl J. Coakley, are we still eating the Adams and Diggs cap this year? Nope. You with Jamal Adams, you did the full meal deal scoop on that. And that's part of the nice thing with it is with Quandre, you only had 1 year deal, so you ate all that anyway. But you could have post June 1st Adams last year and gotten it into 2 years and had his dead money partially hit this year to free up more space for last year. Instead, you ate it all for last year, every dollar of it. So now those guys are free and clear, off the books, all the way. Brian says, really wish Nick Emawari and Arroyo would get their contract signed. They'll get them done. They'll get them done in time. So the guaranteed money thing seems to be a bit of a holdup on some of these rookie contracts for whatever reason. New Blacks, Clowney's the only player I can think of grabbing at the moment. Yeah, me too as well. I look at the free agent market out there, and as we're kind of poking through it a little bit, it's not great. There's not a lot of names left on the board here. You're really going through some kind of also ran guys. Rodgers, Keenan Allen, Brandon Scherf might be a possibility. Matt Judon, Preston Smith, Darius Smith. But then again, just go get Clowney. Those guys on the board, if Clowney's there, take him instead. We got some older guys that were good a few years ago, maybe not as good as they once were. Mosley, Jordan Simmons, Stephon Gilmore. But there's just not a lot out there right now, to your point. It's very thin. Very, very thin. Robin says, I don't think for the price, unless it's a minimum pro, we don't need Clowney. Yeah, if you move for Clowney, Robin, it would be probably that it's a kind of a 2-for-1. So you're bringing Clowney in, and then you're probably going to you would then move probably one of your young edge rushers or one of maybe even Uchenna, if there's any value out there to be had for him. You'd move one of them to another team at that point. So there'd be something that you'd kind of get back in return if you were to sign a Clowney. I don't think you'd just be rolling with 5 edges at that point, which could make it a little bit more feasible to do the Clowney deal because you're not just gaining Clowney. You could be gaining a 3rd-round pick. Maybe you can go flip a Derek Hall for a 3rd-round pick or something like that, on the other side of it. Maybe that's aggressive. Donnie, how you doing, man? Rest in peace to George Wendt. Yes, definitely. R.I.P. George Wendt. Norm! Where everybody knows your name. Do, do, do. And they're always glad you came. You like the Cheers song, huh, Zena? That woke you up. She loves Cheers. Misfits and Sports Track OTC doesn't have updated numbers. It takes about a 72-hour time frame to even sometimes longer, as we saw with the Sam Darnold deal, to get the numbers from the league office. So Fred Warner and the Brock Purdy contracts will be updated, I would say, by the end of the week. We'll know what the exact numbers are. But some of this stuff, there can be a little bit of a delay in them getting the final numbers, unfortunately. Greatest bar fly in TV history, says Chris, for George Wendt. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What a great show that was. Growing up on that show, it was just, they don't make them like that anymore. So well written, so sharp, so many great characters in that show. Nolan, thank you for the $5 donation. What did you think of Jake's prediction of a 13-win Rams team and Jesse going to be wearing a Hawks hat after week 1? Go Hawks. Well, indeed. For those that didn't get a chance to check it out, we did the roundtable last night, the NFC West roundtable, and I know it'll be a little bit hard for folks that are out in Seattle to come and do this, but if you guys are open to it, we did announce as well that we're going to be doing a remote event this season. So we're going to be going, it's not a Seahawk event. It's going to actually be just roundtable, or is kind of setting this whole thing up. But we're going to be doing a meet and greet kind of thing. We're going to be hanging out in the stadium out in LA. So it's going to be the Rams and the Niners playing on Thursday night. If you guys are interested, I've got a link down in the description section below. If you want to go click, it's about for $300. You get access to the event, you get tickets to the game, and whatnot on that. So that's going to be happening during the season on a Thursday night game. Might be a little bit hard for folks that are coming down from Seattle, but I know we have a lot of Seattleites that are out San Diego, LA, into the California area. So if you guys wanted to join up on that, I do have a link down in the description section below. But I did also place a bet with Jesse, where the winner of week 1 has to go on roundtable and then wear the opposition's hat for the whole show. So I will have to wear a Niners hat in week 2 if our Seahawks fall in week 1. Do you guys understand how against this of my religion this is? And I better not see any fans selling their ticket week 1 to make that home field advantage less. I do not want to wear that Niners hat. I literally think I might make all of my hair gray if I have to wear a Niners hat. That's going to be a reality on that one, Nolan. We got to avoid this. I've never worn a Niner hat in my life, but I've got it all on the line now. I got a lifetime of avoiding Niner colors that it might not be thrown to the wild here if our Hawks can't make it happen week 1. I'm not feeling good about that bet. I feel good. It's at home. We got this. Feel great about that bet. I changed my mind. Jake's prediction of a 13-win team, well, look, if Jake is one thing, he is an eternal optimist. And I like that about him. It's not a bad thing to have, but he's always going to look a little bit with a little bit of the rosy colored, situation to his Rams team than anything else. Now, he's earned the right to, too. Team won the division last year. Team was a heartbeat away from getting themselves to a Super Bowl last year. So he's got a reason to kind of pump his chest up and feel good about where they are and what they're doing. I just kind of find myself coming back to the Rams and, Nolan, we're kind of putting together this thing we're going to do for the NFC West roundtable at some point here, showing off kind of the tiers and the rankings. I guess I can kind of tease you guys with a little bit here and show you guys for hanging out with me today. So I was putting my rankings and tiers together a little bit, and we'll see what you guys kind of think about this. I'm sure there'll be some disagreement. There we go. So these were my rankings and tiers for positional groups in our division, and who's who and what's what. And I just kind of felt myself as I was going through looking at the positional rankings of things and where I saw teams kind of aligned on this, feeling like, well, I feel like the Rams got the worst inside linebackers in the division. I think that they have the worst safeties in the division. I think they have the worst cornerbacks in the division. I think they have not bad tight ends, but I think that you could make an argument for the other teams in this division having better tight ends when it's all said and done. And then I think that even with Kyron Williams, who I think is a little overrated, I think the better running backs in this division are in other teams in this division. And I came down to that and I looked at it and I'm just going, boy, you got about 5 positional groups that you're the worst of in this division. You're really riding on the quarterback and the receivers to kind of carry the day for you. Your defensive line a little bit to carry the day for you. And I feel like that as much as the Niners are kind of everything's up onto this year and they're very top heavy. And if a little bit of those top heavy parts go out, like we saw from the Niners last year, when they lost to Trent Williams, when they lost to Brandon Ayuk, that's a last place team now. That's where they fall to. There's some other injuries on top of this that affected guys. Warner played through an injury through most of the year, but it doesn't take much with these very top heavy teams. Like I'd look at our Hawks and say, we're not a top heavy team. In fact, it's probably a little bit of the knock that you put on the team is that you need more difference makers. You need more of that top end side. But we have on the other side of it, a more fuller roster that's a little bit more rounded out, I would say, that's got a little bit more depth where it can sustain itself if it loses some of its starters. Some of these other teams, being the Rams and the Niners, I don't think have that as much. And so I come back to it thinking, man, look, the Rams can definitely go out there and be good this year, and they can go out there and win the division this year, and they're capable, and wouldn't shock me if it played out that way. But I could see them also suffering a little bit of what happened to the Niners last year, where an injury here, an injury there, and suddenly you just find yourself very diminished as a football team because you don't have the depth to lean back upon to kind of carry the day for you with that. So it is possible they get to 13 wins, but I can also see them getting and finding themselves at only 8 wins this year when it all gets played out. I think that they are getting a little bit overhyped. I think that they had a fine season last year, but it's going to be a tough division, and they've got the hardest schedule in this division. Basically the 10th toughest schedule in all of football on paper is how it would kind of look right now, or something in that neighborhood, 10th, 12th, something like that. But I get where Jake's coming from. He's consistent in that way, Nolan, He's an optimist in all ways in that way. You know what I mean? He's an optimist. Yeah, Seth, I think Stafford could hit the age wall like you talk about. That's a guy that's had a lot of injuries. That's a guy that's getting older. He's really a warrior. He'll fight through it, but it wouldn't shock me with him that he comes down to it that he gets some major back injury into week 9 and he's done. And then you got Garoppolo leading the ship. I don't think anybody thinks Garoppolo is going to lead them to a division title if he's playing a substantial amount of games. Catalyst's Rams linebackers and secondary look weak as well, and there are weaknesses on their O-line. There is. And there's some things you can go after. I mean, where's that center position at? Left tackle's fine. It's not impactful, I would say. And Villa's good. But yeah, there's some things there with them. Where they're strong, they've got some strength. Where they're weak, they've got some weakness. Yeah. Brian says, which of our O-line will be the winner of the new Protector of the Year award? Yeah, that's great reference there, Brian. We finally are going to get some recognition of offensive linemen, and then we're going to get our Protector of the Year award, which is cool, where the best offensive lineman in the sport will get recognized, and I think that they should, Got to give those offensive linemen a little more love, Stuart says, dude, it's disgusting hearing you snort sniff. I'm sorry, bro. I've tried to take some allergy pills and get through it on that so that you don't have to be subjected to it, but I want to go live every day. So I'm trying to fight through it, man. I can't do much about it. It's kind of nature hits you with it. So I will try to do what I can, but appreciate the feedback. Mr. Kane, thank you for 45 months as a Hawks Nest Ring of Honor member. Hello, Brandon. Wondering what Walken and Marlon Brando think of our Hawks in the upcoming years? Hit that like. I made it to the live stream. Go Hawks. Well, Mr. Kane, it's good to see you making it to the live stream. Thank you for that. I will try today with the allergies here to do this one, but definitely the nose is holding me back a little bit here right now. So let's see here. What are Walken and Marlon bring to the Hawks in the upcoming years? First, I'll tell you, Mr. Kane, when I like my good teams, I want to see they're going to be good for years. I don't want flash in the pan here today, Gun tomorrow, no. Does nothing for me. No, I want years. I want a Super Bowl run with a big wide window, like French double doors, swinging open kind of windows, lasts forever. That's how I like my championship teams. Decades, not years, Mr. Kane. How about you, Marlon? What do you think? I can't tell you how often I've wanted a winner here again in Seattle. I can't do my bar. Brando's off today, Mr. Kane. Somebody please help me win this team. How are we going to win? I don't know. Again, my Brando's off. Walken's okay today, but Brando, maybe I'm going to blame the allergies today on that one. But thank you, Mr. Kane, for 45 months as a Hawks Nest honor. Brando appreciates it. You're going to be a member. You're going to be a member here for a very long time. As long as my Seahawks are going to win. They're going to win so well all the time that they'll never stop winning. That is the way it goes. Can't do my bar. Walken's okay, though. He's hyped. Future years, we're going to win. We're going to win a lot. A lot, I tell you. Misfit, allergies are brutal here in the Southwest Washington. Yeah, I've been, it's out here in Southern Cal. We've had a Pacific Northwest spring here. And so it's been overcast and it's been wet. And when you get those conditions down here in Southern California, the pollen is just, boosh. And so I've been taking the allergy pills like Tic Tacs, and it's just, I'm not reacting well to it. I need to be in like a dry environment. This pollen stuff, that's not me. Have a good one there, Brian. Appreciate you, man. Kyle from South Park, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, extend Spoon and JSN, the earliest, the cheapest. Be great if you could do both of those two guys, Kyle. The NFL mandate, though, does state that the guys have to get through 3 full years before you can start to even negotiate. You can't negotiate with them while they're 3 years into the contract. Got to wait for them to get through that 3rd year. But to your point, I'm expecting that in the case of both of those two players, the second that you have the opportunity to extend both, you're going to get that job done. That we're talking probably right about this time next year. I would expect that both Spoon and JSN would be included on that. That they would be that they're going to get signed at that point. The Niners have cooties. Niners do have cooties. Catalyst is all this Braden Fisk hype. One of the worst interior defenders last year. Yeah, he's a guy that I still come back to and feel like, look, he surprised me last year in having the year that he had. No doubt about that as far as his pressure numbers go and being legit there. That part is for sure. But, the guy also is, like you say, not good when it comes to a run defending score. So to give you guys an idea of this with Braden, because I think that you're going to hear a lot of hype about him. And here we can see generates 40 hurries last year, 9 sacks. Very nice job on that part, 51 tackles. That's pretty good as well. But then, you come down to it and you look at it, though. I think 2 things stand out to you when you look at the grades from him that matches up to what I thought with him coming out of college that was going to be worrisome. And that is that, okay, he provides something as a pass rusher. He's great with the stunt, the loop game. But then when that guy has to play the run and as a tackler, is getting off blocks, is being sound at holding up at the point of attack, he just doesn't give you much of anything in that way. He's got 31-inch long arms, and you can see 40 run defense grade, 28.9 tackle grade. And those are god-awful numbers at that point. So while he gives you some, look, even as a pass rusher, he's not lighting the world on fire with the 67 grade. That's solid. It's better than average. But you can see, too, look at the snap total here that also does stand out on this, where 662 total snaps, only 225 of those snaps is he in there as a run defender. And when he's in there as a run defender, he's god-awful at it. And that's a guy that they took at the top of the 2nd round that they gave up like a future, I think, 2nd round pick or whatever for to give up 3rd round pick, whatever, to get up for and grab him. That's where I had my issues with him on that as a player coming out, and where it's not just clean and easy that he's just this great up and coming player that's going to be a like star for them. Nah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that because I don't think the run defense is really coming anywhere forward with him. It's always going to be a bit of an issue there. Jordan, I got a horrible cold from allergies. I hate it. Yeah, I do too. It's driving me crazy, man. I hate taking the Zyrtec stuff and all that, the allergy stuff, and I'm trying to, but then it'll just still not make a difference. It's just been I think the weather conditions have just been perfect right now for the allergies right now, unfortunately. Zach, I like Murphy a lot, but I also need him to step up because I have a Genesis Murphy rookie card 10. That's a grade 10. Let's go, man. We'll be doing a look at Murphy from last year here in the coming couple of weeks and taking a look at him and, how he operated out of the nose tackle and why it's kind of so important for them to get him out of the nose tackle. Hopefully they can do so, but as we have seen, they haven't made any other moves other than bringing Hankins back. And so he would look like almost your de facto starter right now at the nose tackle position. If we had game 1 tomorrow, I'm willing to guess that that's where Murphy's going to be lined up at. Yeah, Zach, if we place him out of position at nose tackle, if it's anyone beside Murphy, Murphy's going back there, unfortunately. I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news on this one, but he's going back to that spot. You just don't have anything else there, and they're not going to move Leonard Williams there after he's coming off of a Defensive Player of the Year kind of season. Mr. Kane, Brandon's the best. Thank you, Mr. Kane. Sorry, I don't have anything on my Marlin. I want him to win. Stella, I want him to win. Why can't they win, Stella? Why they got to lose? Why they go positive and not make the playoffs? I got to do the Marlon Brando eyebrow thing. That's what I'm trying to. Why is it going to be this way? It's hard to do the eyebrows and the voice at the same time with him. It's too much of a double dip. Jordan, thank you for the $5 donation. When Jake said this is the most talented team McVay has had, minus Ramsey, my eyebrows raised to the back of my head. Yeah, that one struck me as a little bit odd as well on it. I mean, the Super Bowl winning season, this is a more talented team than that team. The team that went to the Super Bowl and beat that just lost to the Patriots because the offense kind of tanked out at that point with a Todd Gurley on the roster, with an Aaron Donald on the roster. I mean, that's the kind of this is a more talented roster than when you had an Aaron Donald and Ernest Jones on it and offensive line that was a little bit more firmed up, I felt like. Little rose-colored glasses there for me with Jake on that one. And I mean, I get the being hyped on your team, and look, coming off last year, I get being hyped that you had the success last year, which should embolden you to feel that you're going to be even better this year potentially, but not the most talented team. Not when you lost a guy in a presence in Aaron Donald like you've lost the last 2 years. I know the defense was able to overcome it last year, but that's the best defensive player we've had in the sport the past 10 years. You lose that guy. A guy that helped to get you to multiple Super Bowls and win a Super Bowl. I don't look at that as the rest of the team's just no. I don't think it's even kind of close. I think they're heavily driven by Stafford being kind of a miracle worker at the quarterback position at times, and then McVay being such a smart coach and how he runs things there. But I don't think that's they're to me more in that place of being like from the Super Bowl winning team. They're like 90% maybe, 87% of talent of what that Super Bowl winning team was, in my opinion. But he's in on him, Jordan. He's in on the Rams this year, that's for sure. All right, Feed me. Thank you for the $2 donation. Feed me more Seahawks. You hear Brock Purdy camp wanted $65 million per. Yeah, I think that what's happening here too, Feed me, is you're hearing the Niner fans sort of, massaging their own shoulders with this contract and to make themselves feel better by this contract, where they're saying, hey, we got a discount. He's only going to cost $53 million and not the $65 million he wanted. And I brought this up last night to Jesse and the crew on Roundtable, and nobody pushed back against this, so I think this is probably pretty accurate. Number one, the Niners were negotiating against themselves. There is nobody in the world who is giving Brock Purdy $65 million right now, or if he goes out and has a good year this year, we'll give him $65 million next year. There's nobody in the sport that was willing to do that. I don't think that there's a team in the sport right now that would be willing to trade decent draft capital for Brock Purdy and then pay him $53 million per year. They were negotiating against themselves. And that's where I'm not in favor of the contract being done. I think you hear it in even a guy like Jesse talking about the parameters of how they can get out of the deal, how quickly they can get out of the deal. I mean, doesn't it say to you that you're not sold on your quarterback when you as a fan, the second they sign a contract or extension, are looking towards how quickly can we get out of this deal? I mean, we kind of did this with the Sam Darnold thing a little bit, but we also understood with Sam Darnold that there's a little bit of a risk here. You don't know if you're going to get the Sam of last year, the Sam of what he's been throughout his career. You're not putting as much commitment to him as what the Niners are putting to Brock Purdy. It's a bit of a different tale here. You're almost paying twice the money on a Brock Purdy we're paying for a Darnold, not to mention it's a 5-year contract versus a 3-year contract. And so it's not a good deal. It's just not a good deal for them all the way around. When you're negotiating against yourself, when you're allowing an agent to pull up funny numbers like $65 million, I mean, in what world is there going to exist a reality where he was going to make more than Josh Allen? I know the whole next quarterback up will make the more money thing, but Josh just signed that deal. There's no way he was going to get that kind of money. So I think it's hilarious the Niner fans are somehow making themselves feel better with this because it's not $65 million. I mean, that's just laughable to me, laughable. But this contract's going to hurt. You pay a quarterback up around this mark. It doesn't have to be that you have to pay a quarterback top 3 money in order to feel that pain hugely on your roster, in order to start to have to cut and slice and tear away and pull this off and throw that off. It doesn't take the record-breaking contract to do that. It just takes you paying 1/5 of your salary cap to one player, basically, to allow the fallout effect of that to come into play, like I believe it will for the Niners, not just even into this year, but into the next couple of years. And so pretty funny on that one, Feed Me. And I think the Niners are not going to look at that contract 2 years from now and say, like, well, we should have spent. I think they're going to look at it and say, we should have been more aggressive in either forcing him to play the 4th year for his contract, like the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, or move him for what we can get him for and go out there and find a quarterback that can do a lot of the very same stuff he can do while spending a lot less of a price for him than we have to pay. Catalyst, we got to get a massive nose tackle to free up more one-on-ones with Murphy and Williams, not to mention all the simulated pressures that Mike calls would greatly benefit from it. I'd love to see it, Catalyst. I would love to see it. And looking at the names, and we looked at the free agent names a second ago there that were available on Sports Track, there's really no nose tackles out there that are available right now. You're going to have to make a trade. And there's not a lot of teams, I think, that are in a market of willing to give up their nose tackles at this point in time of year. I hope we can find somebody. It'd be great. I'm leading the charge with you on let's get Byron Murphy out of the nose tackle position. That's not the best way to use him. But the team has kind of forced themselves into this same pickle next year because you just haven't gotten the bodies in there that can get it done. Kyle from South Park. Yeah, I understood that we can't sign them this year, but if we choose not, like the Bengals did to Chase, it's going to cost more the following year. Seahawks over 7.5 wins. Yeah, it's you just can't. This is the CBA, Kyle. I understood that we can't sign him this year, but if we choose not to, like the Bengals did Chase. So the Chase thing is a little different, Kyle. So Jamar Chase went through 3 years of his rookie contract, got into last offseason. He was due to be paid a contract extension. He had outperformed his deal, but the Bengals are a cheap organization, and they didn't want to spend that kind of money on him at that time. They didn't want to give him what he was asking for, which was, of course, the moon, because he's been an insane receiver. So the Bengals then forced Jamar Chase to play out the 4th year of his rookie contract. So that's where it's different from it's different from Devin Witherspoon and JSN. JSN and Witherspoon are just going into the 3rd year of their deal right now. Jamar Chase played through the 3rd year, has already played through the 4th year of his deal now. So it's just a different timeline that you're looking at. And then when you watch Devin Witherspoon and JSN come up at the exact moment that Seattle can jump, because right now, Kyle, they can't sign him to an extension. The CBA, the contract negotiations between the owners and the players have stated you cannot sign a player inside their first 3 years of the rookie deal. They've got to get through 3 years of playing time before you can start to give them a new extension. And I would expect on both those guys, they will pay him at that point. But with the Bengals, they waited an extra year. They could have signed Jamar last year, but they waited to this year after that 4th year of his rookie deal. Yeah, Zach, I think JSN's going to get paid too. I think he goes out, has another 1,000-yard year, bump, 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 10 touchdowns like you mentioned. You give him the extension, you call it a day. Catalyst is JSN will thrive in the run-heavy offense. He's an extension of the run game as a slot receiver, catching short and intermediate passes. He will. He'll be great in this offense. Catalyst, the Rams defense is definitely not as talented. One of the youngest defenses in the league that certainly is susceptible against the run. Yeah, they're talented and they're good. They're not a bad defense, but that was a Super Bowl defense. That was a defense with Von Miller and Aaron Donald. That was a defense that had Jalen Ramsey on it. I mean, had to add some good players. I like some of their young talent though. Zach Kitchens is interesting. He's a cool player out there. Defensive line, certainly Kobe Turner's a dog. Catalyst Kyron Williams has had fumbling issues in big games, and his yards per carry dropped this year. Don't remind me of the Kitchens pick 6 against Chino. That's right. Yeah, Kyron's a guy too that benefits. We were looking at the show yesterday and talking about a lot of these running backs that, are reliant upon these other factors outside of them just being talented to be productive. And Kyron is a guy that has benefited the past couple of years from not only having the really smart mind in McVay as a head coach, an offensive-minded head coach, not only then having the quarterback there that can keep the boxes somewhat light, so you can't just concentrate on this guy, but then having the really good run blocking in addition to that. And he's really been set up for success there with the Rams. And I think that then is less to do with Kyron Williams being a sensational back and as much to do of those other factors that other running backs would benefit from in that given situation. Zach, are they going to sell the rivalry jerseys to fans? If so, I'm going to blow so much money on them. I think they're going to get some people with that, Zach, this year. They haven't released them yet. Yeah, that's true. Kyle says, I like Jesse, but his takes are wild. He said Seattle needs to prove it to him this year. But bro, your team went 6-11. They need to prove it to you. Niners have 0 Super Bowls in like 30 years. Yeah, he's not a big believer on the Hawks this year. And I was kind of surprised on that, to where it's like the way he was talking about him was like somehow Seattle has underperformed the past couple of years versus where they should have been. And I think when you have a team that 3 years ago with Russell Wilson turned this thing all the way over and has been, dumping off bad contracts and has been adding draft picks and sort of setting the stage with young talent that's growing and developing, that's the type of team that's not going to come forward immediately. That's a team that you're looking for growth and development to slowly, substantially kind of improve bit by bit by bit by bit. And that's what they have done. It's 3 straight winning years, 3 straight seasons of a winning record. The first team in NFL history to have back-to-back winning years, but not make the playoffs in either of those 2 years. This is not a team that's failing. This is a team that's trying to just break through that ceiling, trying to find that next step that they can take in that process. And so I was a little surprised to hear him kind of have that take on it too, Kyle. That's not my outlook of it. I don't think anybody looking at Mike Macdonald's first year and saying that he should go out there and win 11, 12 games, or that's them underperforming this year. I think that'd be kind of ridiculous for the first-time coach, for the youngest coach in the NFL. And the prior couple of years to that Jesse's talking about with Coach Carroll had a lot to do with some of the schematic issues that were holding us back and the lack of modernizing our approach either on offense or on defense. And that has nothing to do with talent underperforming. That has to do with just you needing to correct some things in-house that are problematic and are systemic and have nothing, again, to do with just where the talent of the team is at or their capability or their potential. Kyle says he said on one of his podcasts before Ayuk contract that teams would give a first for him and pay $30 million a year, then said teams will sign and trade for Brock and the starting offer should be 2 1s. Yeah, I don't, there's no team out there that's giving you 1-1 for Brock. And I think if there had been a team willing to give the Niners a first round pick this offseason for Brock, they would have flung it. But you trade for Brock, you got to go pay him $53 million a year as the floor. Nobody's doing that. Not with his injury history. Not with his limitations from the arm strength standpoint of things. Nobody's doing that. And that's where we come back to, Kyle, when I say that they're negotiating against themselves, they're negotiating against themselves. With the Brandon Ayuk thing, I made this mistake with DK, so I can't knock Jesse on this because I made the same mistake where I looked at the DK Metcalf situation and thought that you could get a 1 for him, and you couldn't. And a little bit of the wide receiver returns now in the modern era have kind of changed a little bit. And what maybe we used to get a first round pick 5 years ago, maybe it's now really more embedded as a second round pick, especially if you're going to have to pay that guy that big time contract like you would have had to for an Ayuk or whatnot. So I understand where he's coming with on the Ayuk last year situation, and the Niners should have moved Ayuk, But that's the big issue here with the Niners when you look at some of these deals, is that rather than make the moves, rather than make the trades, they had a reported second-round pick offer for a George Kittle in the draft. They turned that down. We know that they could have moved Deebo Samuel prior to this offseason and actually gotten a little bit more than they got this offseason for him. They tend to hold on to their players a little long. And with Ayuk, I think you could see with that team that's more of a run-centric team that had just drafted a first-round receiver that had the development of Jawan Jennings, that a lot of signs were pointing the Niner organization at that point to move off of Ayuk, save that money, put the money into other places like the offensive line instead. But they didn't do that. They pay those guys that come up, and they tend to pay top of the market prices. You made George Kittle the highest paid tight end in the sport. You made Fred Warner the highest paid inside linebacker in the sport. Again. Both of those guys' cases. Again. So I definitely think with them, they've got a little bit of a blind spot on this, Kyle. You like having loyalty, and you like paying players, rewarding them for being great warriors for you, but you also don't want to pay for past performance, or else you're going to get to the future and come to find that they don't have a lot left in the tank. I feel like the Niners should have made a lot more tougher decisions the past couple of years, made a lot more of those harder calls, rather than kind of just doing the boring, easy thing, which in the interim made everything fine and they brought their guys back. But for the long term, I think that you pay the price there a little bit on that. Seth says, haha, for real. We got better and proven coaching staff on the offensive side now, and we have a decent free agency and a good draft. Amen, man. Yeah. Kyle says, lastly, on the roundtable, he says the Niners are sweeping Seattle with what? Yeah, I that's why I want to come back to him, because I've got us sweeping the Niners too. So I think we're going to win that first game at home, and I think by the end of the year, I think they're going to be wore down as a roster. I don't think Trent Williams is playing by the end of the year, and I think you're getting both of them against them. Martin says, if we can get even league average performance from our O-line, we have a lot of really good offensive weapons and a lot of really good, very hard to defense against. If we can get even league average performance from our offensive line, we have a lot of really good offensive weapons and a lot of really good, very hard against players. Looking forward to seeing it. Agreed. Yeah, league average would be a huge bump to this team from an offensive perspective if you can land at that spot of things. An offensive line that league average from what's been right around league worst over the past couple of years would take this thing really far forward. And in knowing that the defense is going to kind of carry the day a bit for this team, and hopefully good special teams and hopefully a good run game, that's enough. That's enough to get you to 10, 11, 12 wins potentially, because it's by design. You're not doing it by accident, but by design. And so there are a lot of weapons on this team, offensively speaking, to work with. This offense is one that's about kind of peppering the ball all around through. I can't tell you how many West Coast offenses and games I've watched with West Coast offenses over the year, Martin, where the telecast loves to flash to the stat where they show, such and such has 24 completions today to 11 different wide receivers, 11 different receivers. He's hit 3 different running backs. He's hit a couple different tight ends. He hit a couple different wide receivers. You're working the ball into all different places because you're just always at all times with this offense trying to keep the defense from pinpointing and from being able to lean a direction or another to make it harder on you offensively, because you're kind of capable of hitting them in every which way. That's sort of the hope here in general terms, but we'll see if it does play out that fashion. They've got a lot to work with. The talent is there. Christian Haynes comes forward. Zabels locks in at left guard. One of the 2 centers comes forward. You're good to go. Stoney says, should we get a superhero? I wouldn't turn one down, man. I don't want to do the Hendrickson trade, but if a Watt trade's out there, if you can get a Micah Parsons maybe kind of move, depending on how the negotiations go with the Cowboys, I'm okay taking a swing in that direction big. I think with Hendrickson, though, he's a real pressure machine and he can get his share of sacks. I do think he's a guy who's not as good at playing the run. And I don't know if he's as much of that fit with the power edge kind of mold that Mike Macdonald's looking for. Kyle, thank you for another $2 donation. I know about 3 years. I'm talking about 2026, laughing out loud. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, they're definitely, when it gets to the end of this season, I don't think that they're going to play that game, Kyle, like you're seeing the Bengals play. And I think that just the place I'd provide some evidence for this is that in the past, when you have guys that get through 3 years of a contract and they've, as rookie deals, even first rounders, and they've outperformed that 3 years, that once you get to year 4, you've tended to pay those guys. You're not, you don't make an Earl Thomas wait. You don't make a Cam Chancellor wait. You don't make a Richard Sherman wait. You don't make a Russell Wilson wait. You can go through a kind of a litany of some of these guys, and at every turn when they had earned that deal, and you had the cap space to spend, you gave them the money, on that. So I would be very surprised to see either JSN or Witherspoon move on into the future. I think those guys are cornerstone, foundational kind of players, and I would expect them to maintain on in here in the future. For sure. Sorry I misunderstood you on that. Kyle says they also would have gotten Chase at a cheaper deal last year. What I'm saying is if we choose not to pay JSN in 2026 and make him play the fourth year, we might have to pay more in 27 like the Bengals. Yes. Well, you're 100% right in that the cost is substantially increased this year, the 3 years versus the last year. It's part of why, Kyle, the deal will get done. But I think I would present to you this as far as your concerns on this, because I get where you're coming from. But with our organization, we are as different from the Bengals organization when it comes to spending money as you possibly can get. We're 180 degrees in the opposite direction of where the Bengals are. The Bengals are never going to have a point in time in their organization's history where they're eating $50 million of dead money. We've done so twice in the past 4 years. So it's just to make that comparison to them is probably not very apropos, especially considering, like I said, when you come back to looking at the players in-house that develop, that are productive, that you've drafted, you reward them with contract extensions. It's almost to a man that it works this way with John going down the line. I draft them, I develop them, they perform their deal in that first 3 years. He doesn't tend to make those guys play out that extra year. That's not his modus operandi, right, Kyle? He's also a guy that has very rarely, if ever, used the franchise tag. And if he does use the franchise tag, it's not to then prevent the player from getting the contract extension. He then moves the player to a team to where they're going to get the extension, like Frank Clark. So Frank never played on the franchise, had it applied, but then got the extension before the franchise tag would have clicked in with Kansas City. And so John's track record is just one where he pays these kind of guys like JSN and Witherspoon. He doesn't try to play that game of I'm going to stretch this out. I'm going to make them, have to. Because he wants to send the message to the thing that these kind of deals do is they send the message to the locker room saying, if you're going to be a badass, if you're going to put in the work, if you're going to, do what we're asking of you, we're going to reward you for that. We're not going to try to play games with you. And I think the Hawks, one of the places I got to give them a lot of credit is that there's a lot more cutthroat organizations out there that operate with a lot more of that, kind of like you're talking about, Kyle, that operate with a lot more of that. We'll do whatever we want to do, and you're our property. And it gets a little dark, quite frankly. But that's not Seattle's way. That's not John's way. He's gonna reward him. HHG, can the Cowboys even pay? They can. They've got the cap space to do it. Do they want to do it? Hard to say. The thing with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones and his track record is that, he's kind of synonymous for making these players wait. They do end up paying their guys, but they try to make them wait. They are a little cold-blooded with it, and they're not a team that plays the void year deal stuff. They don't like to do any of that shenanigans with the cap, so it's all straight up with them. But they've got $31.8 million right now. They're right above the Hawks as far as cap space goes, but they've absolutely got the money to go out there and get the Parsons deal done. It's just a matter of do they want to? And that's going to be kind of an interesting situation to monitor, I think, because you can see where that thing could go sideways if not. Haley, hi B, tell me why I'm sipping Milrow Kool-Aid. Oh, I love to hear it. I mean, there's a lot of people hyped on Milrow right now, and he's going to be an interesting case study, Haley, in regards to is there going to be a quarterback? Because this is a bit of the narrative right now that I think is a narrative for good reason, and that is that if you have a really rough, raw quarterback coming out of college that just has so much to kind of clean up, even if they have so much potential, they're very unlikely to reach that potential. You need to be closer to it by the end of college if the hope is that you're going to hit it as a pro. But we could see that, like all things are always in a state of evolution and change, and that this change in evolution that could come forward for the Hawks into the future on this could be that the VR training headsets, for sure, for instance. I can't bring a quarterback along in processing 20 years ago because there's only so many reps on a practice field. There's only so many opportunities that he's going to get to run through live fire exercises to get better at the processing. Well, now I can put a VR headset on him and have him do that a couple hours a day. And now, where once we got through the end of training camp and Maybe he had 300 reps running through in processing points. Well, now I've got him 4,000 reps collectively through an offseason with the VR reps. Does that allow that guy to come forward in development and get better with that kind of thing? With all of the gurus that are out there now and evolving mechanics and your throwing motion and getting yourself better at consistently throwing the same motion, same way, cleaning that stuff up with guys like Jordan Palmer out there. And that's existed in a way that's more so than ever before. Maybe those guys can bring these guys along in that way too. So both of those items have got to be the places that he gets better and improves upon. I think it also helps that he's got a situation here where he's not going to be forced to be out on the field immediately necessarily. I'd really like to let him sit. I know they're going to try to bring him out for a smattering of snaps here and there. But the hype is up through the roof with him. A lot of people really love him as far as, and I can't deny it, the upside is there. He's being called this great lotto ticket in the draft, and he certainly is. He certainly can make you that multi-million-dollar winner, but it also might not be worth nothing too when you come to the other side of it. I think you'll get some value with him, even as kind of a kitschy, gadgety kind of player. But that's really the key at the front of it, Haley, is can he develop those other aspects, those things that in other quarterbacks in other years has been very hard to bring along and develop. It's very few and far between that can bring those skills far forward going from college to the pro level. But I will say the upside is as real as anything else as far as I would not push back at all against those that say like, he can be as great as he wants to be essentially. If he can get these skills rounded out and fixed and cleaned up, I mean, the upside is in many ways almost just about limitless. He's got as good an arm as you're going to find out there and as good a mobility as you're going to find out there. He's got good size to him. He's not huge, but he's just well built. He's going to be able to take the beating of the NFL too, in addition to that. So I'm hopeful for him in the long term. And it will be that, like I say, interesting case study to see if he can be the guy to kind of overcome that where others have had some issues, run into that. Can Kubiak run block against the Rams D line? Well, he can't run block, but he can certainly put them in a better position to be able to execute those blocks better, I would say. But Rams are definitely a little bit weak when it comes to defending the run. Cal's FanDuel has the Niners at 12.5 wins. Smash the under. They had Seattle at 7.5 wins. Smash the over. There we go, Cal. I love it, man. Mark Sanchez says, B, your wall looks a little bare. I sent you something that will fill the space. Go Hawks. Well, thank you for that, Mark. I appreciate that. I know I've got to put, I'm trying to think about something here, Mark. So maybe I'll be putting up whatever you're sending on there to this spot. It was either going to be, whatever you're sending me, or I'm going to eventually decide on the helmet. We might move in soon, so I wasn't going to set the helmet up, I don't think, probably the year, but I was going to maybe put like a Hawk helmet up like right there, over my right shoulder, I was thinking. But thank you for that, Mark. I really appreciate that, man. Very kind of you, brother. I look forward to I'll be on the lookout for it. Haley says he just seems like the kind of work ethic that will develop. I keep going back to 3 season, 3 years. Just hope Kubiak sticks around at least 2. It's what he needs. He needs a real fertile ground here to allow that development to happen. And the things you mentioned about flipping out OCs, not having in the same kind of scheme that you can learn and master, these are things that can prevent that development from coming forward at the fastest rate as possible. And if there is a kid coming out, I will say Haley, if I look at the last 25 years and looking at a kid like this, that is this kind of archetype of player, and there's not a lot of them because these are, freak shows. These are guys that are built in a way nobody else is built to be able to do. You might find the legs of a guy that can do what he does leg-wise, but then not the arm, or the arm, but then not the legs. But he brings a bit of both of those two together that he pairs together. But you give him that environment of having the consistency of a coach around him to bring him along. You give him the time to develop, and you don't try to force feed this and make this happen fast. And then the point that you bring up is a very important one, and that being that, do you have the work ethic? Do you have the ultimately everything you need to do to get that thing cleared up? Because you have a lot of work here to be done. Yeah, you're really supremely talented, but you are going to have to chip away at this thing on a daily basis for years, like 2 years, essentially, to get to where you're ready to really start and go at that point. And having his military background with the parents like he does, and that, he's wired that way, coming like you'd expect from military parents to go and get the job done and do everything he needs to do. If there's one player that's been built in the right way to be able to bring those skills together in a way that other players have not been able to do, Haley, this is the one kid who's built to do it, who's got the work ethic to do it. I think a lot of them you get a little bit like the Anthony Richardson thing, where when you're hearing about Anthony Richardson having to come off the field last year because he's winded, and you've never heard about that from a quarterback before, and you look at the guy and the way he's built like a tank, and you go, man, how are you winded? Winded. Does that speak a little bit to work ethic? The fact you see a Richardson not really refining the skill set and getting better here in the last couple of years with time there. I think some of the problem there with Richardson's been the same issue that we're not going to walk Milroe into, being that, you're going to ask him to play immediately. But I think that that's where some of the people that maybe haven't developed that have had that wild ability and the great upside have not possessed the work ethic to get it all tapped into, especially because there is so much to be cleaned up within it. So I'm hopeful for him to do it. I am. And I'm only a little reticent to believe it'll happen just because of that history of there being so few success stories that have hit in that way. But I'd love to see it. Sean says, wasn't there an issue with Lawrence and Micah Parsons on Twitter? Yeah, there was a tweet that came out where Lawrence got asked by a Hawk blogger about coming to Seattle versus the Cowboys, and he wanted to come to have a championship opportunity in Seattle, which he didn't expect was there with Dallas. Micah Parsons fired back on Twitter saying, I forget what Micah said. It was something about something. I don't know what it was, but he tried to throw some shade at Lawrence. Lawrence threw some shade back at him, saying, if you were doing less talking on your podcast and more winning, maybe I would have stayed. So there was a little bit of a back and forth, Kyle, Sean, but it didn't get real personal. And I think that if a trade happened tomorrow between the two teams, I don't think that those guys wouldn't be able to squash it pretty quickly at that point, would be my guess. But yeah, there was a little bit of a tete-a-tete. Seth K. Aloha says they need to make a consumer version of the VR training. Ha ha ha. I'd love that, man. I've been saying, man, I feel like the next stage for gaming that needs to come forward is the VR headsets. And man, I would love to be able to play like Madden with like headset on. You can play the quarterback. I mean, that'd be great. I've wondered why it hasn't really come forward more firmly over the last 10 years. Just kind of seems like it's remained stagnant a little bit. And Dogzilla, you definitely helped pay for the neon sign back there. So I try to invest back in your guys' donations and put it back in the channel where I can on that, for sure. But yeah, absolutely, man. You're a big part of this, the neon we got back here rocking. I love that sign, too. They did such a good job on it. Femi says, how about a viewer wall, B? What's a viewer wall, Femi? Put a giant moose head there? Nail Pumpkin to the wall. I got to get, maybe I put Pumpkin as one of those little shelves that they can sit on. She'd be all over that. Stoney says a picture of Marshawn's hand on his crotch diving in the end zone then. That might work. I'm open to it. Kyle says, thank you for explaining the difference. I was just worried. I get it, Kyle. Because, I mean, the Bengals have put themselves in a hell of a predicament by waiting, right? And you can find in the Bengals, to your concerns on this, that in waiting, it doesn't work out for the teams. They're playing this game of dice, which is just stupid to play. If the guy's earned his money after the 3 years, pay him or move him. Pay him or move him. Don't wait the 4th year. I think that this also played out for the Cowboys with the Dak Prescott deal, where you had him as a 3rd rounder. You made him wait an extra year where he'd outperformed the deal in 3 years. You made him wait through the 4th year. I think then he had like the broken leg, and so you still had to pay him. It got real sticky there real fast, and it didn't need to do so. I don't think it really helps these teams out. It's more about them being cheap than it is about them going, well, we're not sure in what we have in him after 3 years. Maybe one more year to really, really ascertain what he brings to the field. Yeah, it doesn't really go like that. Martin says, Brandon, which positional group do you think is the weakest on the Seahawks roster? Good question. Probably down to two positions. I think that left guard and nose tackle specifically are the two that stand out to me, Martin. We still don't know if we really have a starting left guard on the roster. Bryce Cable-Dew was a tackle that you're hoping can transition to guard, and Zabel's a guy you're hoping can become the left guard that might be a center when it's all said and done. So I think that one stands out. And at nose tackle, you have Hankins here, and then you have nothing behind Hankins except for Byron Murphy. And so you're very thin at those two positions in addition to that. Corner would be the third one, Martin. Femi, I think you forgot my donation. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I did. Thank you for the $2 dono. Femi, a reason I have hope for Jalen is the VR training. Yeah, you've seen in Jaden Daniels, I think, the greatest example of VR having the impact that it can have on the field. When you look at Jaden Daniels out at Arizona, and he was a very young player in just general terms, there's always room for young players to develop and get better, and that they're not a finished product from when they just first walk in the door in college. But one thing he's credited, and one thing that you can really feel from him on the field, is that he's basically leaned on that VR headset. I think he kind of almost mandated it there with LSU when he came there, that they brought that into play for him to come there, and that he's been able to really bring his game forward in a big way from the processing angle of it using the VR headset. And specifically in his case, what we hear about what he does is that he'll do the VR headset, but he'll turn the speed up 1.5. And so you have everything flying super fast for you at this super hyper speed, and then you get onto the game, get on the practice field, you get in the game field, and suddenly everything slows down. And isn't that the way that it feels with Jaden Daniels? Like the game has slowed down for this rookie quarterback. The game has slowed down. I don't think we ever say that. And I just go back to the VR being the great equalizer here that helped to bring him along. And you would expect that this is a place where, with the quarterback position being so hard to learn, technology really does feel like the place that could really help this position out as much as anything, because it is such a mental position. And it's a position that can be aided in the mental acuity by getting more reps brought into play. The more reps, the better. And with VR, you're limitless as far as the amount of reps that you can roll for a QB in that situation. So seeing Jaden Daniels be able to come forward like he has, and knowing Jaden, to Haley's point above about Jalen Milroe's work ethic, you kind of put those things together and you go, woo, maybe this is where that opportunity will come forward for him in that way, with the VR headset to bring him forward. So as I've said, the kid needs to be living in that thing. I would be hours every day. If you have a basketball player and you tell him who's struggling to shoot, and you go to that guy and you say, look, I need you to shoot 300 shots a day. I want 300 jumpers going up a day from you. Well, from Jaden Daniels, I want you in the VR headset a couple of hours a day minimum. I want by the time we get to training camp, I want you to have a permanent indentation on your head, like when you've been sleeping on a pillow too much. I want the permanent VR indentation all over his head. He's doing interviews, and all you can see is you can literally see Sony in the side of his skull there, because it's pressed for so long for so much amount of the day. That's how I want it for Jalen. Jay Malfair, Byron Murphy is wasted at nose tackle. We should be able to pick up someone good on the cheap. 100%. I don't like seeing Mike Murphy at the nose tackle. I don't mind a smattering of snaps here and there to give the offensive lines different kind of looks up front. But I would rather have him working off the edge than having him work off of the nose tackle position. Jay, agree with you 100%. And unfortunately, we're really looking, as much as it'd be great to go get the guy on the cheap on the market, Jay, I think that we're stuck here. I don't think that there's anything out there that there's someone that they can go get. And that they're just going to have to kind of force him out there for another year here. And that's unfortunate, because it's not the best utilization. A guy can do a job, but what you want to be doing with your football players is putting them where they're at their best. Not what they can do, but what they can do best. Because that's where you build up the best team. Instead, you're kind of having him fill a hole here because you just couldn't find anything else that was legitimate, which kind of sucks. But maybe there is some kind of answer here somewhere. Yeah, but Seth, I agree. I think Byron can be a dominant 3-tech. He's kind of like a league average nose tackle. What would you rather have for your former first-round pick? go be a dominant 3-tech, a guy that has potential to be one of the better 3-techs in the sport, or go be a average nose tackle. It's a little annoying on that one, just a tiny bit. Seth says, I feel bad for Mike. There's never any cards. He's got some guys in there, Seth. There's some folks that show up here and there, you know. It's a tougher area. I mean, Arizona got a little bit of, to a lesser degree of what LA's got to deal with, where you have a lot of transient folks coming in, transplants, that just aren't from that area, that are fans of other teams, and it can make it hard. Make it hard. Classic reloads ball. Jay says the whole point of Mike Macdonald's defense is to put people in the best positions possible. He's doing it everywhere else. Agreed. Makes it that much more of the head scratcher to why you're doing with Murphy a first round pick. And that I think this is a very straightforward outlook of Murphy in where he would be best, to where you don't say, nose tackle is nowhere close to where he's going to be his best, and he can be dominant as a 3-tech. And your point about utilizing the players in the right place is well said. You're not putting anybody else out of position on that defense in Mike Macdonald's defense. Everybody is being put in the best position to succeed for what they do. He's the one guy you're not doing that with. Oddly so. So hopefully they can find some answers. I'll just say, Jay, going through the free agent market and looking at the nose tackles that are available, going through the teams in this sport right now that might be open to trading a nose tackle on their roster, it's very few and far between at this point. I kind of feel like the team had to have gotten this work done in free agency, had to have gotten this work done a little bit earlier this offseason, and now waiting this long is going to kind of force their hand to putting Murphy back at the nose. Haley, yeah, they're going to use nose tackle a lot. Nose tackle is on every single play. There's a nose tackle on the football field. Nose tackle is essentially alignment as much as anything else. You're the strong side of the formation, and most of the time you're going to be angled between the center and the guard shoulder on the strong side of the formation. You're going to have that guy every single snap. A guy's going to be aligned like that. The only exceptions to those kind of alignments are going to be those teams that run more of the wide 9 kind of defense. Unfortunately, with Mike Macdonald, he doesn't really run a lot of wide 9 looks. You might get maybe 24 wide 9 looks over the course of a season, as far as snaps go, Haley. So they've got to have one. They've got to use one. And there's one on every play. And it's kind of makes tough. Steve says, yeah, there's a lot of other teams and a lot of fans of other teams in Phoenix. Yeah, it just makes it tough out there for you guys a little bit on that. Doesn't get talked a lot about, but that does make it hard. People come down there to retire. I'm going to retire from Minnesota. Well, I like Minnesota. I'm from Michigan. Well, I like it's just right. It's tough. It's a little bit tougher there for that, especially because Cardinals are also another team like the Rams where there has been some bouncing around. St. Louis, Arizona, right? It's been a little bit of that at play there too with it. That does make it a little bit tough. But I can attest. I lived in Arizona for a year. They've got a loyal fan base within that mode of transplants. It's not all just a bunch of people half in or whatnot. They definitely have their committed folks, and you got to give the Cardinal fans credit too, because it's not like they've been given a lot to base the fandom on as far as like having a ton of success. You've gone to one Super Bowl and you lost it in your history. So you're not giving the fans a lot too with that to, be as dedicated in that way. But they're great. They're a cool fan base. They are. Mark, thank you for the $5 donation. Mark B, since the tush push is not banned, do you think we will use Milroe for that play? I do. Yeah, I do. I think a little bit of the worry that you have at times in running the tush push in recent past history has been that you're worried about maybe the quarterback getting injured. I want to say that I think Patrick Mahomes might have dislocated his ankle at one point on kind of a tush push quarterback keeper kind of play. But with Milroe being the backup, you're not as worried about that. You're not going to be as concerned with him doing it. And it was cool with Alabama. They would run this thing, Mark, where they would run the tush push there, and you'd have the defense all amped up on the tush push. I'm seeing if I can find the the cut of it. Oh, I know where I have it. Hold on. I got a kind of a cool cut I want to show you because I think there's actually I do think, yes, number one, they absolutely can just run the tush push kind of thing and go that route with it. But then, let's see if I'm going to find this one play I want to show you. It was kind of a cool one. Here we go. It's this one right here, I think. Yeah. So check this out. So here you got the setup for a tush push, and you have Robbie Oots lined out over on the right side, kind of lined up as a H-back tight end there, right? So everything's loaded up here for the Tennessee Volunteers to think this is a tush push. But then watch what Milroe does. See that? Now he just gets the ankle. Oots basically lays a really good block here. A nice kick out block, and as the guy's falling to the ground, he gets a handout on Jalen Milroe. But see how Milroe fakes this? So rather than making it a mark, rather than doing the tush push, he's got such good quickness and speed. He just breaks this out like a hole and goes. I would do this. I would absolutely do this because you see teams completely sell out to stop the tush push. And this is just one little ankle tackle away from being a touchdown. But yeah, Mark, I think you're going to completely use him in this method. And you're not going to have any worries about him getting injured. He's really well built to run hard in those ways and push that pile forward there on those kind of tush push-like plays. And that's a way to get him on the field and get some productivity out of him on top of it. So I think the team would be silly not to use him in that manner at this point. And maybe Mark as well. Part of the reason that John didn't vote to do away with the rule, that they were one of the teams Seattle was that was okay with the rule remaining in play, being that you can use the tush push. Maybe partially some of that reason Mark has to do with John going, yeah, we're going to intend to use that a lot this year. No, we don't want that. We don't want that regulated out of the sport. We've been counting on that thing remaining in the sport. We got our own Hertz now to be able to run that stuff. So yeah, I think they absolutely will run it. And maybe even one of those little, just a little bit of you have them take 2 side steps and then get up the field, open a hole to that side. You got the whole defense collapsing down on the A and the B gap. Go bust a big play out of it, kind of have a little bit of a curveball that you can kind of throw defenses on that kind of play. I think Allen's done something like that before too. Josh Allen's run it out of the tush push like that too. So I absolutely think they will, 100%. HHG, get a stuffed Seahawks B. All right, I might do that. I've been leaning on the helmet, but maybe a stuffed Seahawk would work. Jay says, too many Card fans in Phoenix for some reason. Too many Card fans in Phoenix for some reason? What do you mean by that, Jay? David says, I'm from Phoenix too. I'm in Phoenix too, from Seattle originally. A lot of Seattle transplants down there, David. A lot. I think there's even some Seahawk bars, a couple of them, and I want to say in Phoenix. Because, look, I'm the same way. You get tired of the weather after a while. You want to get into some sunshine, You're tired of being cold and wet all the time. BB says, thanks for hanging with us, B. Yeah, we'll do occasionally some of these kind of interactive shows. Kind of mix it up a little bit. Just kidding. I really like the roundtable representatives for each team, except that Jesse guy is just kidding. Besides Brandon, Jesse's my favorite. Yeah, Jesse's awesome, man. He really is. And I love working with those guys. I'm so glad Roundtable's setting up that in-person meeting and that we can do all of that. And hopefully we have a great turnout. We can do some tailgating out there. You guys know I'll be streaming. It's going to be kind of cool too because it's not our Hawks playing that Thursday night. It's the Rams and the 49ers. So I'll just be out there kind of, needling Jesse and Jake and trying to instigate a little bit with those guys, Mr. Kane. But it's been really the coolest part in doing this channel over the last year is to have the roundtable stuff open up. And it's something that I really love to do as well because it gives me an opportunity to kind of get outside of just talking about the Hawks, and we can get into more subjects at times that have to do with more NFL-centric things. And I think in the future, the roundtable is going to do nothing but grow, and I think be a substantial part of what all of us do within this online realm, where we have our channels, but we try to see this thing become as major a part in what we do as what we do individually in our channels. I think everybody's on board with that being the case. And we just got to kind of put the plan in place to make that kind of thing happen. Maybe even trying to find a way to get 2 shows a week done here this next year. I'd love to be able to angle that with the crew if we can make it happen. So more to come on that for sure, Mr. Kane. Zab and Sense Studio, if you had to buy a new jersey this year from any rookie, who would it be and why? Great question. Great question. If I had to buy any, I would probably go with the Nick Emawari. And we've got a show on Friday that's going to be looking a little bit at the what I call the nickel spin, where I think a lot of people are trying to figure out with Nick Emawari and Witherspoon who's going to be the guy to fit to the Kyle Hamilton role. And I think the real answer there is it's going to be a bit of both. It's going to be matchup centric, I think, a little bit to a degree. But with Emawari, I'm not a big fan of the number 3 on a safety. I will say that part of it. But I think that he's a guy that's going to be a fixture on this defense and that he's just the perfect exact kind of ideal weapon that Mike Macdonald loves to have in his secondary. The guy can do so many different things that you can line him up from safety to the slot. You can pull him in there like a off-ball linebacker. You want to run some kind of base defensive looks at times, but then have him serve as sort of your Sam linebacker in that look. He can do all of that stuff. It's not something you're going to have to force him to be able to fit into. His size and his movement and his length allows him to be able to play those different positions, which gives Mike that much more flexibility to flip and change coverages pre to post snap and to bring more confusion into play. But I think he's a really good player in addition to this. I don't know if he's going to get to stardom, but I think he's going to be a hell of a player for you for the next few years and a real pure fit to this defense with that flexibility he provides. That would probably be the one. Not sure outside of that. Probably a Zabel or a Horton, I would guess. I don't know if I can go full Milrow at this point. I got to check in with me on training camp at that one. Steve says, yeah, I have a lot of friends that are Hawk fans in Phoenix. Really annoying. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. They're great. It would be a little annoying. I get it. Especially when you have so many transplants there and you're trying to kind of get the Cardinal team as a whole to really, set and take hold and capture a little bit of the imagination of that fan base out there in that way. And you got a lot of folks that are diehard Cardinal fans out there. But yeah, a lot of us Seattleites go out there to Phoenix, man. When we get tired of the weather in Seattle, we'll skip right past LA and just go right down to Arizona. We're not just trying to warm up. We're trying to, microwave this thing. You know what I mean? We've been chilled to the bone, Steve, for sometimes decades at a time. We haven't felt the warmth of that 100-degree weather. Phoenix is hot, though, man. It's too hot. Too much. David, love the interactive shows too, B. Appreciate that, David. I'll try to mix this up throughout the off seasons and stuff. I know we've talked a little bit more about these being just kind of quick in and out shows, but every once in a while I'll keep this mixed up for you guys. We'll do a little bit of, peppering in. I don't mind doing that a bit here and there, especially we have a good discussion. Zabel's a good pick too, Duran. I mean, Zabel's going to be here for the next few years. I mean, at least, very least there, you can take a jersey. You want it to be a guy that's going to be there and be a part of the team for years to come on it. So Zabel would be a good pick as well. I have a guy to go get a jersey for. It's the highest drafted guard you've had here since Hutchinson on that side. He'd be my backup off of Emawari. Emawari would be my number 1. Zabel would be my number 2 on that. Chili, I'm just worried about Oluwatimi. I'd like to get a blue chip center. I would too, Chili. Part of the reason I think that there is a chance Zabel ends up at center is that I think having a kind of dominant blue chip type of center is a kind of an important thing for this offensive scheme, for Kubiak's system, if I can speak. And so, you would love to see them be able to find that. Not really a guy. I think somebody had, I think Dogzilla had mentioned maybe the thought of David Andrews, a center that is a free agent right now in the open market. And maybe that's a guy that you can go get that's a little bit elder, long in the tooth, but maybe you feel better about what he brings versus what you have in-house. I am a little concerned about where we stand with the center position as well. I think Oluwatimi at least gives you some functional play, Chili, but you're talking about looking to get something that gives you a little more impact. Not just gives me like a little bit worse than league average play, but how about we get a little bit better than league average play from the position? And that would be nice to see because I do think you're kind of locked in with knowing what you're getting with Olu. And maybe Sundell's the guy that can ascend in that way and overtake him and be the guy that's a pure fit here with his mobility and what he brings. We'll see on that. But there's definitely an opening here to have a little bit more talent at that position in the future. Vimy Boye Mafia is my breakout player. I could see it. He's been scratching on the surface of breaking through. He's been a bit hot and cold, and I think injuries have been a bit of a part of this. So we go back 2 years ago, and I think he had a sack in like 7 straight games, and then once you lost Uchenna Nwosu and he started to get the double teams, he wasn't able to get as much done. Last year, it seemed like he was rolling for a little bit of time, but then the injuries popped up, and he seemed to be a little bit reduced with some kind of nagging, just nicked kind of injuries. Nothing major, just sort of a little bit nicked and dealing with some real, collective minor things, it felt like. But the guy's got a lot of talent, and he has been this close, it feels like, over the past 2 years of taking that next step forward. So if it were to happen, I could absolutely see it. Steve, it's a dry heat. It's different. It is. It's a little more easier to take with that. That's the other part about going from Seattle to that place. I mean, especially me today, Steve, I'm dealing with allergies here in Southern Cal. You don't get any of that in Phoenix. It's such a dry heat. There's no pollen in the air. At least you can kind of, breathe at times on some of those days. Whereas like out here today, it's like the nose is just locked up. Phoebe says, B, how are you feeling about the Mariners season so far? I think it's great to see what they're doing. They have a hard road to get to where they're going, and that they don't have a lot of room for error. Their offense, as you saw yesterday with a 1-0 loss to the Washington White Sox, just has days where it can generate nothing. And we've seen that through the last few years. And it's leaning so heavily on the dominant pitching to kind of carry the day. They might be able to pull that off. We'll see. I think that it makes it really hard in the Major League Baseball when you're spending 150 million less than some of the top teams in the sport. They do have a lot of real young talent that's kind of developing behind, that's coming up, that's going to help in the next couple of years. But I think if this team's going to really want to go out there and get to the postseason, its ownership is going to have to cross the bridge at some point or another this year of adding some relatively substantial money to make that happen. And if they don't do that, then you're probably going to see them run out of gas like you've seen in recent years, even when they've been good at this time of year, maybe not this good, but close to this good at this time of year, because you just don't have the depth of roster. You don't spend enough money to be able to maintain. It's a long Major League Baseball season. You need to have those guys you can call upon to come in and step up. So if they spend some money, I could see them really making some noise, but it still is a frustrating team to watch because it's an ownership group that really is not doing all they could do to make that a winner. And I feel like they should reward the fans with how dedicated they've been to that team for the since they've opened that stadium, especially with so many bad years since that new stadium's been opened. But that'll be the key to me. Cool to see them doing well, though. David says, curious if you'll be doing the play-by-play streams still. I will be, David. Yeah, I'll be doing the play-by-play streams for sure this year. Absolutely, I've decided I'll do that. We'll see what we're going to do as far as post-game stuff goes. I'm still kind of deciding on that as far as, do we do the post-game discussion, or is it going to be a little bit more angled to try to do, I think kind of part of me thinks ideally here it's do the play-by-play and then do my 15-minute wrap video I do on Sundays, and then come back Monday and make sure that we can just hit it hard during the week for the weekly shows during the week. That's kind of what I'm sort of turning over right now. But yeah, I want to do the play-by-plays again. I enjoy doing that. I think those are very popular for the channel in addition to that, as far as help and growth wise. So yeah, we'll keep those going, David, for sure. HHG, I take dry heat over whatever any day. Yeah, dry heat's not bad. It's kind of what you get nice out on the east side of Washington as well when you're in Spokane. It gets a little dry out there as well. The allergies aren't as bad on that side. Seth, I do like Sundell's physicality and athleticism. Guy can move, and that's the place that he's really got head and shoulders over a team he beat, is that this is a mobile-based scheme and wants linemen that can move in space. And Sundell's got that way ahead of Oluwatimi. Oluwatimi kind of just gets by when it comes to the movement-based stuff. Steve says Allegra D, or a generic equivalent, has been the best for me with allergies. Taking Keratin at night seems to help too. I got to start taking more. I just hate taking all those pills and stuff, so I'm always anti doing that, but it's been so rough this year. I've got to start dropping it. We had a complaint in the chat here today, so I better get on that a little bit more. Dogzilla Max said they had a VR project going that might benefit more people than just Milrow. Oh, that'd be cool. This would be one of the places, if I was running an NFL organization, I would be looking into VR heavily. And it's also a reaction, Dogzilla, to the reduction of reps. The last two CBA negotiations between the Players Association and the NFL The Players Association has put at the head of the stack of their priority list wanting to practice less, wanting to have less field time, less padded practice time, and that's going to make it harder to develop guys. And so you've got to find creative ways to now get those mental reps in if you can, since you can't really fake the physical reps. You can train them as hard as you can and have them lift weights and have them run and all that, but you can do it with the mental reps. So it'd be cool if they're able to embrace this beyond just the quarterback position, Dogzilla. Chili says, Dan Darnold did have a better offensive line than Seattle. Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. They got injured. He had better wide receivers. We're talking to the chat a little bit today. Just kind of make an exception here on today's a bit. See how it goes with it, Nick. Yes, he did have a better offensive line there with the Vikings than we had last year. We'll see if they're better on paper. Nick has been wet over here north of Spokane, 50s and lower, still burning wood from time to time. Take the chill out of the house. Wow. Ooh, man, slow summer, huh? It's been slow down here in the south, too. Do I see Anthony Bradford having success in this scheme? No. I just think that there's a lot more technical requirements within this scheme than you just line up and whooping the guy's butt in front of you. And in Bradford, I just haven't seen him taking really big steps forward. He came in as a real raw, big, great athletic lump of clay. And I think that he's kind of really been about the same player he was when he walked in overall. So I'd love to see it. He's got a lot of physical potential, but it still just seems like there's so many raw parts of his game, so many whiffs on tape with him that are kind of surprising at times. Femi says, B, did you see the NFL linebacker ratings? It's more like a comedy list than a linebacker list. I didn't, but that's some of the places we get into at this point of the offseason, Femi, where people start putting a list together. You start getting all-time team things. You start getting, what is this for? And it starts to get into kind of minutiaville a little bit. But no, I didn't see it. I'm sure they've got us sold a little bit low, but we got a solid linebacking core. HHG, we need those B therapy post-game streams when we lose. I might. Some of it's going to be about HHG just making sure that we're in the good spot as far as the discussion goes and that things aren't going off the lane. And, that's been the real issue with trying to, do the interactive stuff as much, is that there's a lot more with people just kind of getting nasty and mean with it a little bit rather than wanting to have good discussion. So as long as the chat can kind of maintain that place of things and we don't get too many people that are coming in just trying to, start stuff at it, then I'm happy to do it at that point. But I just want to make sure, as it was kind of tilting last year and like we talked about around the draft, just kind of got to the extreme spot in the draft where, boy, things were really kind of twisting in a way where it's just not loving always the discussion where it was at times, especially from being just a respectful standpoint, chatter to chatter or chatter to me or vice versa. So Seth says Ernest Jones was ranked like 29th out of 32 for his position. Comical. That is comical. Yeah, he's way better than that. Way better than that. And that's a strange place of ranking. That's quite far off on that, Seth. They've got Tyrell Dodson as a top 10. Yikes. I don't know. Maybe they're just looking at the PFF and trying to pull it off some rating with that or something. ZD Woods, do you agree with national media on us going from DK to Cup as a substantial negative, while the Rams going from Cup to an older Adams is a substantial positive? As far as DK to Cup, substantial negative, I don't know if I'd say it's a substantial negative. It is a negative. You are going back at the position from where you were. Specifically when you really look at the X position. Cup can give you some, I think, versatility and ability to give you productivity from a couple of different receiver positions. But with DK, he was really so much of a purified X, and you don't necessarily have a purified X replacement in place, being that Cup will do that stuff, I think, very infrequently. Will he be lined up in that place? There'll be more Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a little bit of Cup, a little bit maybe of a Horton. likewise, I would say on the other side of that, CD Woods, does Devontae Adams substantially improve the Rams from where they were with Cooper Kupp? No, but it's an improvement and a little bit for the same reasons. Because with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, you have kind of the same player on the roster in what they bring to the receiver position. They're kind of half and half slot guys, inside, outside guys. With Adams, he's a pure outside X. So you get more of, for the Rams, aligning guys to just more purified positions. You can now less reps of maybe Puka on the outside, more of Puka to the slot now where he could be at his best. I think that there is an improvement there and a detraction on there. That's right, CD, but it's definitely going to be overstated when they say the word substantial. I don't think substantial is necessarily going to be to that great of a degree. Yeah, Brian O'Neill was also lost at the end of the year in that final game against the Rams in Vikings 3 hour. You're right. They had both Darisaw and O'Neill out by that game. Says, yep, they had Dodson ranked in the top 10. Joke of a list. Yeah, that's a joke. And that's a list where that can tell you right there, Seth, that don't take too much away from it because they put very little work into it. That would be my take on it. They basically probably took a haphazard look over at PFF last year and they were like, we'll put this here, But of course, with Ernest Jones, for instance, he had a good portion of last year playing for the Titans. It's not a good team. Was it a grade that bad, or was it as much that playing on just a bad team there and not a lot of help around you? Vimy, who is your favorite draft pick? B, minus Torrey Horton. Ooh. Favorite draft pick, huh? Horton's a good one. I don't know if I could overtake Horton. It'd probably be Horton, Emawari, or Martinez. Those would be the three there for me. I think Emawari and Horton would be the two that I'd probably go back and forth with on. I'm right there. I think Horton was your best value pick in the draft. So picking him would be very simple with it. I just love Emawari's fit to the defense and getting a player like that to add to the defense. But Damian Martinez, another one right in there too, Seth. Getting him in the 7th round is just ridiculous. As you say, that's insane value. Nick Harbor is a Seahawk next year. Give me my freakishly big wide receiver back. They'll probably be looking for one here in the future, I'd say 3 hour. And if you were to add one next year, wouldn't shock me in the least. I think if Tedatora and McMillan had been on the clock when Seattle picked this year, very good chance that they would have taken him there with the 1st round pick. But they will be out there looking for one, I think, at some point in the near future, to your point. Y2K, thank you for the $5 donation. Y2K, I appreciate you for that. He says, extend Cross now, lower the signing bonus, higher first-year cap hit. Let's go! I think to your point, and there's going to be a show that we're going to do around this, looking a little bit at Charles Cross here soon, Y2K. So your nice little teaser on your part with that one, where we're going to begin to show up, I think, maybe the next week talking about this. But I would expect that Charles Cross is very soon going to be a $20 million man a year. And that, like you say, to your point on this is the time to sign him to an extension because you can lower down that first-year hit. You can massage out the numbers of the books now to get him his guaranteed money, to get him his money in hand. But you can have him set, and he's now that pillar in place here as we move on into the future. You're not overpaying him as well. So I think the team's going to get that deal done. With the extensions on players, this is the time of year that stuff will start to click in. Teams don't tend to want to do the extensions early on the offseason, right before free agency. They want to get free agency done. They want the draft pick signed. Then they know how much money that they have to really spend and how much they have to set it up. But I would expect them to get that deal done with Cross before training camp. I would say that'll be done, but you'll be able to put the numbers in the right place getting this done now if they do as well. And I just expect it to be done. So yeah, absolutely. That'll be done and won't cost that much when you can kind of put all the deals, lower down his first year to base it to like $1 million. It's really just going to be the bonus money. So if you're sitting on right now about 30 million, you're going to lose maybe about 8 million or so more in addition to that, 7 to 8 million more addition to that off the cap if you put Cross onto a contract extension. But it also could be just down to where you release Fant, you sign Cross to an extension with the money that you saved out of Fant, and then you still have $31 million to spend. So they got plenty of money to do this, a variety of different ways to make it creatively get done, and I expect it to happen, Y2K. Thank you though, man. I appreciate that donation. Very kind of you. Very kind of you. Chili. The Rams have a good defensive line and defense. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Poona Ford. Imagine if they had Aaron Donald. Oh, that'd be very scary if they had Aaron Donald. The one thing I will say, Chili, is if Donald came back, they would be in a bit of a predicament where they'd have 4 3-techs on their roster and probably end up with a lot of situations where they're rocking 2 3-techs on the field at one time, which is then going to make them that much more susceptible to running the ball on them. And what was the biggest issue that defense had last year was teams running on that lighter defensive line. So that's the one little issue that's there with it. That's the one kind of issue in general with that defensive line as it stands right now is it's not the biggest and beefiest. It certainly is quick and very capable of running a lot of games to make life hard on you up front. But I would say that they still have a little bit of weakness when it comes to defending the run that you can get after. And that's going to maybe work in our favor really well because this is a team that's going to double back down on running the ball this year and being good in that way. Afimi, who is going to be our leader on our O-line? Because I heard Cross was a quiet player. It's going to be Zabel. Everything that we're hearing off Zabel is that he was a talkative guy and in on in that way. And so I would expect that he eventually becomes more of that guy. I think probably Lucas is a little bit in that kind of quiet, strong, silent type, a little bit in the way that he rolls too. So you don't need a lot of them. You just need one guy that's kind of the guy that talks. And a little bit another reason the why maybe I could see Zabel kind of eventually sliding into center is that he's also going to be the guy that might kind of be outfitted to become eventually that kind of leader on that line to be that guy. And we do know that they do tend to be centers as the talkative ones, as the ones that get everybody in line, as the guys that call out the protections and make sure you're prepared for any blitzes or any games that are being run up front. I'd expect to go that way. Seth, do you think Riley Mills will play more of that oversized edge when he's healthy? Yeah, I could see it. I don't have a strong opinion about it because once Notre Dame moved him up to 295 pounds, they didn't really use him as much off the edge versus early on in his career when he was more of a 270-pound edge. That's where they put him at. But he's got familiarity playing at Feed Me. That's his background is coming off the edge and knowing how to set the edge and how to get your hands in the right place and win the leverage off that. So he's got it in his bag. He certainly would be a bully of an edge if you put him out there against a tackle. Nobody's going to move him off the spot. I could see the team initially seeing that's a way to use him, especially if he's able to come back off the ACL relatively quickly, is that's a valid way of using him. And I will say that when you look at Jared Ivey and you look at I was looking at the other kid that they took last night. In fact, kind of all 3 of the undrafted rookie free agents that you brought in, and J.R. Singleton's one of them, and you got a couple of the guys in this last undrafted rookie free agent class, about 3 different edges you took that all 3 of those guys, the main thing and what they do is I think kind of defending the run off the edge. The one kid you took out of Illinois is a little bit undersized, more 245. But Singleton and there's another guy you took that are up at legit bigger edges. So that does show to me a little bit of there being a motivation by the team to want to go find that big edge versus what you have already on the roster there at that point. So maybe that's an indication that that's what they will do with Mills. So he's got the background, he's got the ability, but kind of depends on where they're going to ask him to play weight-wise and on that. And I think he's majority of the time really going to be really at his best as a 3-tech. That's where you really do want him. But he can do it. Hell, I think even Seth, I think the play that he got injured on tore his ACL last year. I think he was coming off the edge on that particular play. Dogzilla, besides Leo and Geron, what else do we have for big leadership personalities? I think Ernest Jones is a quiet guy, but he's a leader type in what he brings. I think that he's good with that. I think that Julian Love is a leader for you in that secondary, a very smart, heady player that can help lead the way from his side of it. I think Uchenna Nwosu has been a vocal cat. How about DeMarcus Lawrence? I actually think that we have kind of first world problems right now when it comes to Dogzilla, the amount of leaders that we have on that defense. It's, I think, more than it's been in many recent years. Or if I go back 2 years, I go, well, I got Bobby Wagner and I got Uchenna, right? We had so many young guys on the roster at that time. You know what I mean? HHG says, never go full Milrow, B.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
I had that soundbite ready, HHG. Got that one ready. How many rookies will make the cut? I think Riley Mills starts on IR, Dogzilla, so you don't really count him on the roster because he goes to IR. I think Richmond probably ends up on the practice squad. Cable Dew probably ends up on the practice squad. Ricky White ends up on the practice squad. Other than that, I think everybody else makes the active roster. Yeah. Everybody else makes all the other rookies would make the roster on that. And I don't think that you're probably going to see any UDFAs make the roster. I'm going to be looking at a couple next week that have potential to do so. And Zay Alexander's got a really great chance of doing it because there's such an opening there for him to go grab. But I don't have a lot of confidence on that one. Maybe what season do we expect from Marcus Lawrence? Avanowosu, Lawrence early downs, Mafe and Hall passing downs. A little bit you'll do that. I think there'll be a mix all the way around on how you use these guys with the rotations, Phoebe. Lawrence will probably put up something similar to what he does from a career standpoint. You'll get really good run defense. You'll get probably 4.5 to 6 sacks this year and what he brings from a pass rush presence. Good all-around player, rotational guy, but able to bring impact when he's in there. Martin says, how should we deal with improving or adding to our options at cornerback? Do we look to do something now or hold over until next year? I think you might be looking for a stopgap right now, Martin. I do think that the team should be in a little bit on the Jalen Ramsey situation and seeing what's going on with him, especially if the Rams are in a position right now to basically get Ramsey back for no cost. If that's going to be the case, then jump in on that. You've got the cap space to swing it. You could bring him in and he can be an answer here for at least the next 2 years and solidifying things. He's an upgrade over Josh Jobe. He gives you insurance then for Woolen if Woolen leaves after this year. I think you're stuck a little bit in general terms, Martin, as it stands right now. I think that you're probably going to try to get by at the corner position minimum through the early part of the year and, go get a Rasul Douglas or a Shaquille Griffin. And then maybe there's a team halfway into the year that's fallen off that they thought they were going to be good, that has a cornerback that's going to be up for free agency and that you like a lot and you can go get. I think that's really that's the ideal scenario at this point versus kind of the reality of what you're looking at on the other side, which is you don't feel great about the options you have. Stephon Gilmore, Rasul Douglas, Shaq Griffin. You just kind of got Jags out there right now. And I think they'd like to get a little bit more substantial impact if they could. So hard to say on that one. I think they're definitely open to adding a body here, but it's probably one we're going to have to wait a kind of a year on this to go get something that's a little bit more fully legitimized, where it's not a matter of if you can just develop and get over this, get over that, or be a legit talent again. Mr. Kane, Hawks Nest, I don't know if this is the best platform, and you may have already answered this on another stream, but who do you like most out of our UDFAs? I'm going to be doing a UDFA show. I'm part of the weekly shows here. We'll be doing that next week. I think I've got that set up for Monday, Mr. Kane. The two guys that I go into my mind that I like best and by far best, I am still starting to look for. I was doing it last night, looking at some of the other tape of some of the other UDFA guys that I hadn't had a chance to look at coming into the draft. So I'm still kind of getting through all of the names, but I do feel like I'm kind of whittling it down a little bit. Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss is a really fun player. Knows how to use his hands. He's a big power edge, 275, 280. So he fits to the role of that thing that we're kind of looking for right now, Mr. Kane, right? And that he's got that in his bag to be able to do it. Could be an interesting kind of guy there with that. You've got J.R. Singleton out of Iowa State, a nose tackle type. Maybe he can fit there. That's as much if you have the need for it. Please, God, be a fit. Please, God, we need you to do this so we can move Byron in a different place. So I'm almost as much hopeful with him. His tape was okay that I watched. He's got some times he shows some good stuff as a nose tackle and holding up, and he gives you a little bit of pass rush stuff too, where he's got some good lateral mobility for his size, but I don't think he's as dominant then as a run defender either in having that pass rush ability. So that would be the two guys. Ivy's legit. I mean, he's just a lot of fun to watch. He can be an inside-outside guy a little bit too in addition to that. A guy that dropped as much because he just didn't test well, didn't have a great Senior Bowl, but when you turn on the tape, it looks pretty nice to me. I like what I see from him off the tape. Then the third guy is Zay Alexander. That's the LSU kid that we took. He started a lot of games out of LSU. There's some really good tape on him. He's got some flashes of some good all-around skill that he shows in both his ability to play zone, play man, play press, be a good tackler, and come up and actually, make a solid tackle, not just kind of go through the motions on that. He also has got his share of kind of blunder moments on tape where he gets beat over the top, isn't in the right spot in coverage. He's playing over the top cover 3, but yet gets beat and stacked. So there are some things that are little issues with him, but he's got a lot of physical ability, good size on him too, 6'1", 6'2". So he's a guy that I could see of all the UDFAs, he's got the best chance to make in the active roster. But those 3 guys are the guys right now I'm narrowing in on, Mr. Kane. Those Ivy, Alexander, and J.R. Singleton are the 3 guys that I'm kind of most on board with thinking they've got the best potential. But I still got a couple guys I got to look through over the weekend and dive into their tape a little bit and make sure I've got a kind of more firmer ground on them too. Ivy's fun though. He's kind of my favorite of the bunch. Chili, I like that we signed DeMarcus Lawrence. Our defense got better. It definitely got better. You're returning all of your starters, Chili. Everybody returns. And not only does everybody return, but you have Uchenna Nwosu, who was pretty much gone all of last year. Even when he came back, he wasn't his full health. He said so himself. And that you're getting Uchenna Nwosu back as kind of a freebie extra player. And then you're adding Lawrence on top and Emawari in the secondary. You brought all the starters back and you've added another layer on top of it. And in Lawrence's case, that gives you 4 guys to where now you not only get a guy in Lawrence who can give you the power edge role that you were kind of missing at times in Mafe and Hall. He gives that to you in totality. But then you also get the guy that can round out the rotations now to where nobody's having to play too many snaps. Nobody's getting wore down over the course of the year. Ideally, you can keep mixing these guys through and giving that opportunity to just keep sending waves of pass rushers at the opponents, which is exactly what we've seen the Eagles do over the past couple of years and to a great effect. So he provides, I think, all of those things in alignment, and he will be a very key part of this defense and what he provides. It's a piece, but it's a very important piece and one that's necessary. HAJ Seahawks legend Cooper Kupp and Jalen Ramsey. How mad we made the Ramsey? We got Kupp and Ramsey in the same offseason. Chili, we didn't lose anybody on defense, but Trey Brown and Rayshawn Jenkins, they played really bad last season. Yeah, not losses at all with either of those 2 guys. Neither were starters by the end of the year. You're okay with losing them. Not a bad loss at all. Seth says D-Law's always been that dude, especially with the run defense. Our edges haven't been very good at stopping the run. No, he is. He is that power edge. He is that hammer off the edge that you just can't move. If he wants to root down against you as a tackle, if he does not want to be pushed around, he will not be pushed around. And that is, like you say, something that's been missing from the defense. They were hoping last year Mike Morris could maybe ascend a little bit more to being that power edge. He just really couldn't do it. They hoped that Draymond Jones could transition from the 3-tech to the power edge role. He just couldn't really do it. So this has been a bit of a missing point from this defense here in the first year of Macdonald. And one that I've said oftentimes, Seth, kind of power edges is where this defense starts with. That's where Mike wants to start and begin from in a lot of ways. So it's not just a thing that's a nice thing to have, but a necessity for the defense. What's up, Daniel? Williams says the organization seems high on linebacker De'Aaron Jackson from Kentucky. That's going to be another guy I'm going to look at, William. He's on my list as well. I've heard that from them too. So I'm hoping to get into his tape this week as well. Mr. Kane says, I'm a big fan of Ivy. Thought Zai would have been drafted, so I'm excited for him as well. Don't know anything about the others. Depending on my brother from another mother. I got you, Mr. Kane. I got you. I'm going to be grinding through the tape this weekend on some of these guys. And we'll try to find the pearls. We'll get the wheat from the chaff and see what we can locate. I think there's some interesting names to look at here. But those guys you mentioned are the guys to me at the top. Ivy and Zai are the ones that I think are kind of those are your diamonds in this UDFA class. Those are the guys that I could see absolutely making the roster and becoming really good players down the road. Not impact, but good players in this league. Those are guys that I had draftable grades on and not 6th, 7th round draftable grades at that. I was a big Ivy guy, though. I've got to admit, Mr. Kane. I mean, there's so many other people that are really low on that guy, and I know Dan Viennes hated what he saw from him out there at the Senior Bowl. Didn't show a lot out there, but just I like bullies off the edge and bullies off the edge that can be both strong and use their hands. And he can do both of those 2 things. But I got you. We'll be looking at that on Monday. We'll be diving into those guys on Monday and taking a bit of a deep dive with them. Chili says, I think John Schneider pushing the cap so he can sign rookies this offseason. Dogzilla retirement at center, plus injuries at right guard and right tackle last year were terrible. No depth, and we were looking thin again this year. We are. I wanted to see us hammer the offensive line and make it a point of emphasis this offseason, Dogzilla. But to your point, you signed Josh Jones, and then you went out there and you drafted Gray Zabel, and that's kind of just about all you've really done. And that's not a lot. Now, maybe the coaching and development will be that much more improved to where it can overcome, but you do get a little bit worried about it. You'd like to see this a little bit more stronger of a positional group, understanding that this weakness has been a thing that we've been dealing with there on a yearly basis here for almost 10 years. And I think it's one of the places that is the pitfall of this upcoming season, is that we could find ourselves walking back into that same hole that we've been in so many times, because the team has kind of gone a little bit light in really dealing with it in the way that they could have on the other side of it. We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see on that side. All right, we got a good couple hours in today. I'm going to go ahead and put a bit of a wrap up on that point of things. Thank you to all the people that donated today. Y2K, Mark, Feed Me, Kyle. Feed Me a couple times over. Appreciate you that. Kyle a couple times over. Thank you. Mr. Kane, brother from another mother. Concierge Nolan, Jordan. Me coming in with a $50 donation on that. I thank you for that. Me, I really, really, really appreciate that. You guys are just awesome as ever on the support here with the channel. And it does feel like this has been a really pretty popular move that we've made here so far this offseason, moving on into doing the daily show content. So we're going to keep this thing going. Every once in a while, I'll mix this up with you guys. We'll do some chat interaction as long as everything's flowing and going good with that too as well. So keep you guys on your toes here at the Hawks Nest as we go. But we're going to keep these shows going all the way through here on this offseason as we can. I think we're going to push this all the way up in through June, and then kind of at the end of June, maybe take a week or two right before the start of the season to kind of catch my breath, get out on a beach or two or whatnot, and then light this thing back up come the season. There is a special event that we announced last night on the round table that I just want to post one more time here to you guys, being that if you want to join us, we're going to be doing a kind of meet-in-person thing. It's going to be everybody from all these fans meeting up. So we're going to have Mike from AZ Sports. We're going to have Jake from Jake Ellabone and his Rams channel, Jesse from Last Second Sports, and myself, yours truly. We're going to LA. It's going to be for a Thursday night game in October there between the Niners and the Rams. We're going to be doing tailgating. We're going to be doing a night before event. We're going to be getting tickets with fans, and we're all going to be sitting in the same section watching the game together. So we've got this planned. It's out right now. They're trying to get these tickets filled up so that they've got the spaces filled up so they know who wants to go and who doesn't want to go. So if you want to travel down there and meet on up and do this big, huge meet and greet thing that we're going to do, down in the description section below, you will find a link to sign up right now down in there. So please do sign up if you want to. I'm really looking forward to doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know it's not our Hawks playing. It's a Thursday night game, but it doesn't mean we can't have some fun. And I hear it's a hell of a place to go check out the game. So I'm kind of looking forward to going up there and seeing what's what with that. So that'll be really cool out there. Please do check that out. As well, you guys probably do want to get subscribed over to my Twitch channel, The Seahawks Nest. Again, the link is down there in the description section below. I've been going live a lot more often here over on Twitch. We're going to be doing more so this offseason. I think I'm going to get maybe Madden and do some playing around over there. So if you guys want to bounce over there and do some discussions and stuff as well over there, I'm also going to be, at some point this offseason, we're going to be doing a book reading. I don't know if you guys know, but I got a book published out there on Amazon. So I'm actually going to be reading the book, doing a live read through over there on the Twitch channel this offseason. So you do want to get subbed up over there to that, as we're going to be running some more content through that side of things. So back in here tomorrow. I forget, what do we have tomorrow for tomorrow's show? Oh yeah, we're looking at Bryce Cable Dew. So we're going to do a deep dive on Bryce Cable Dew tomorrow and take a look at the Seahawks 6th rounder. Guy with some pretty good potential to what he brings in his game. He's got some light feet. He's got some heavy hands. When you look at why he drifted, I think, a little bit to the 6th round. I think sometimes with him, though he can move in space decently, he sometimes has some targeting systems that can be a little bit off in his ability to locate guys to the second level or when he's pulling out in space. But a guy that's played a lot of college football out there for Kansas, and a guy who I wouldn't be shocked if eventually can find himself a home over there at the left guard position, a tackle to guard convert from the college level. That's what you like to see for this system and scheme. So many have taken that approach in the past, where NFL teams are just looking at them at tackles and going, not good enough to be a tackle, not quick enough to be a tackle, not twitchy enough to be a tackle. But you kick them into left guard, and they can be an athletic left guard. That's the kind of the cool thing about making that transition, is you go from being kind of a borderline good enough athleticism-wise to handle it out there at the tackle position, to now you move just one position just to the side, and you suddenly become almost damn near a hyper-athletic guard. It's kind of the cool thing about making that transition in that way. But we'll be looking at Bryce Cable tomorrow. On Friday, we're coming back around looking at the nickel situation for your Seahawks. Who is going to be the Kyle Hamilton? Is it going to be Devin Witherspoon? Is it going to be Nick Emawari? Or could it be maybe just a bit of both on that situation? So we're going to be looking at that as well on that possibility on Friday. We're going to keep these shows going throughout this offseason, Monday through Friday. Seahawks Weekly coming at you at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Keep on checking out with us. Keep on rolling with us. I'd really appreciate it. As David says, on your guys' way out, if you can, even though I was sniffling a bunch today and it was probably very annoying, I really apologize to you guys for that. I'm trying to take the allergy stuff. It's knocking me off the top of my head right now like nobody's business. So do please, if you could, for me, if you can deal with the sniffles, hit that like button, maybe sub on up as well, as it does help this channel out. Especially hitting that like button is a big deal when you guys do that, as it does push this content out to other Seahawks fans that are searching for Seahawks content. It's not just an empty gesture on your part, but a very, very impactful thing that you guys do when you do hit that like button. I thank you guys for watching today. Make sure I got through the last questions. Felt like Cable is going to be better than expected. He's got some potential to him. He's played a lot of football. And those guys that have made those transitions into this offense in the past have had some success. So he's got a baseline here to work off of from years past. Seth says Gray's probably going to start left guard. I think they're going to try to make it work there with him. And hopefully he can take, because that'll make us feel much better about this team if he can just settle right in instantaneously at that left guard position. Just knock it out. Centers can be where they're at. Then you can keep Christian Haynes over at right guard. Everything just, it's the dude's rogue. Brings everything together. Brings the whole room together if he can just slide in there and just take to that left guard position. Steve Holler says, good show. Nice talking to Hawk fans. Anytime, Steve, and you're always welcome in here. We try to pride ourselves here on being respectful in this chat, whether you're a fan of this team or that team or whatnot. We want to have good football discussion here, and we also recognize that some of the best football discussion comes, Steve, when we get fans from other perspectives coming in here, because you obviously can get into a little bit of an echo chamber situation and, not have as much of that outside of kind of angle and look to things, which just kind of gives you a better, fuller view of things when you have that chance. So please do come back on in here. Always welcome, no matter whether you're not a Hawk fan or other fans. And it's always appreciated. I appreciate you watching. You have a good one, Dogzilla. Appreciate you too, man. So that's why I say Cable's going to be left guard, because we don't have one beside him right now. He might just get it because of the default in that way, Seth. You're right about that. And you literally don't have anybody else behind him on that. So hopefully it works. Fingers crossed. And Chili, I agree. Abraham Lucas is going to show up this season. He's going to be a very important part. He is in a lot of ways. What is going to make this O-line go? His health. As we saw last season, is that the O-line looks way different when you have an Abraham Lucas out there versus when you're putting somebody else out there. That is for sure. Back in less than 24 hours for you guys. Looking at Bryce Cable getting through the rest of this draft class. Got a couple other guys to look at. The UDFAs next week on Monday that we'll be taking a look at as well. So we will be back very, very soon, less than 24 hours. I really thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate all of the donations and the support here to the channel, and you guys rolling with the new format like you guys have, not skipping a beat, not missing anything. So thank you for that. Back very soon. But until next time, I shouldn't have to remind you, with a season on the precipice, with a team on the precipice, they've been just cracking through that ceiling, right? It's that glass ceiling. You don't hit the glass ceiling, you're not going to get through. But you know what you got to do? You just got to keep battering that glass ceiling. You just got to keep knocking on it. And you get that crack, and you see that spider web of the glass going in every different direction. And now little glass pieces are starting to fall through, and you're just banging on it and banging on the Hawks' last 3 years and winning seasons, banging. You know what eventually happens? You shatter that glass and you break through. So don't you forget, Seahawks fans, don't you get lost in the sauce on this one. This team's getting ready. This team is this close. Is it going to happen this year? I'm hopeful for it, and it very well could. But you better be paying attention, because you're going to want to be on this ride if it does click into place. Thanks for watching. Back soon. Don't want to have to remind you, but I'm going to do so anyway. Don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.